I think before it's all said and done, if he stays healthy, he's going to be an All-American. He's going to play in the NBA.
Certainly, Lanny Smith's play has progressed.
What happens when a career-ending injury shatters your NBA dreams just 33 days after signing your rookie contract? For Lanny Smith, it became the catalyst for something bigger and the beginning of a journey to understand his true purpose and the infinite capacity of his own mind. Recently diagnosed with ADHD, Lanny isn't just embracing his neurodivergent brain, he's proving it's been his secret weapon all along. In 2020, while the world was hitting pause, Lanny pressed play, launching Actively Black, a premium athleisure brand with a mission that goes way beyond clothing. In just 4 years, he's turned it into one of America's fastest-growing Black-owned brands with a valuation of $60 million, dropping collabs with icons like Muhammad Ali, Tupac, and Bob Marley, and partnerships to design the official merch for Marvel's Wakanda Forever and Disney's Mufasa. He's fresh off of outfitting Team Nigeria for the Olympics. But those credits and numbers only tell part of the story. The Actively Black team is comprised of just 3 full-time employees, Lanny, his partner Bianca, and his mom. And yet, they've donated over $500,000 to Black communities, taken over professional football stadiums in Los Angeles and Atlanta to create full-day mental health programs for Black men, and played a pivotal role in emergency relief for Los Angeles wildfire victims in the historically Black neighborhood of Altadena, where they rose to the occasion and donated thousands of dollars worth of brand new clothing to impacted families. Actively Black isn't just changing the game, it's changing lives. And one thing's for sure, Lanny's building an empire that's less about asking for a seat at the table and more about building a whole new table. All while showing the world that ADHD isn't just a disorder, it's a new world order. It was never about the clothes. Actively Black is a movement for collective liberation. This is the Lanny Smith story. Raw, unfiltered, and as neurospicy as it gets. You've never heard him like this before. Lanny, welcome to ADH-Chievers. Can you tell people a little bit about who you are, not what you do?
My name is Lanny Smith, from Houston, Texas. I am a very passion-filled, mission-driven person who feels like God has given me a purpose. That's really how I feel about who I am.
What is that purpose?
And
how are you living it?
Yeah, I believe my purpose is to speak for and fight for the liberation of not only my people, but all oppressed people, and do so with the gifts that God has given me. So we're doing some things in a different way than others who have come before me, who have had this same purpose and same mission. But yeah, I just God has given me some incredible gifts, and blessed me to have an incredible network of people that are helping me on this mission.
I agree. I agree. And we're very grateful that you're in touch with that mission and that clarity, and that you're working through that mission. And the expression may be clothing as the CEO and founder of Actively Black.
Right.
But we know that there's much more to it than clothing. And clothing just are helping people to see a greater message and a greater need within the world and the community of just togetherness and power. So
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Man, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel really honored. I feel, I'm not really sure if you know the impact that you've had on me. Not me already getting emotional. I was invited to attend the launch event for Actively Black and Wakanda Forever collection.
Yeah.
By an industry mutual. I moved to Los Angeles less than a year before that event. So I was just kind of starting to understand what's possible in this place. And I didn't know anything about Actively Black. I'd never heard of you. I'd never heard of it. And I knew about Wakanda Forever.
Right.
I knew about Marvel.
Right.
I knew it was premiere week. So I
Right.
said, I'm going to something.
Right.
You know. And I expected to go to an industry event and see a fashion show and have some fun, have some drinks. And first of all, stepping in there, just immediately the level of excellence of whatever I just stepped into. Right?
Insane.
Like the details of I was in Wakanda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So immediately I said, okay, I've been transported somewhere else.
Yep.
And still to this day, by the way, it's probably the coolest event I've been to. And
Wow.
I've now been in LA for 3 years. So.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
But event aside,
Mm-hmm.
Marvel aside, Wakanda aside, I had never heard your story.
Mm.
And you took a moment to really pause in a crowd full of all of those people.
Yeah.
And talk about manifestation and talk about faith.
Mm-hmm.
You shared your journey, which we'll get into, a journey of immense pivot, pain,
Yeah.
perseverance, overcoming, success. And what really stuck with me was family.
Mm. Mm.
Your mom.
Yeah. Mom was there. Yeah.
And I saw success all of a sudden from a completely different perspective than how it had been fed to me since moving to LA.
Mm.
And people here will feed you a lot
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
success. That time I had no idea that you were an ADHD. I don't know if you knew you were an ADHDer.
When did I get diagnosed? That was what was that? Was that 2000? Was that 2022?
Yeah.
That event?
Yeah. It's 2022.
So
October.
yeah, then it was after that because I think it was either during the pandemic or right after when I actually got my diagnosis. So I was fresh and still understanding what all that was.
So not even from the perspective of what we're here to talk about today, which is your incredible journey and success and its relationship with your ADHD, but I really just want to take an opportunity to let you know that that speech stayed in my body.
Wow.
And then I got to follow and engage and learn more. And in this place where everything is so noisy, I found somebody who was always sticking to their values and grounded in their story and making compromises for their values. And I need that. I need that all the time to remind myself here in this crazy place that we've chosen to live that you can be successful and you can be yourself.
Yes.
And you can stand for what you stand for. And so I just am really grateful that you're here because obviously you're a very busy person. We'll get into that. But I just want to welcome you with my whole heart.
Appreciate it.
Because it's been such I cheer from my couch for you, and I really believe in what you're doing. But more than anything, because to be honest, this is the first time I'm wearing the full outfit, actively black. This is the comfiest outfit I've ever worn. But more than the clothes, more than the product, I believe that companies should be made by the people behind them and the values behind them. And that's what this represents. I know that your clothes are a movement and are a product of you. So over the years, it's been awesome to just follow and connect. And I don't know if you remember this, but I was actually supposed to start this talk show around that time, about 2 years ago. And I ran into you at another Wakanda event. And I was like, just in the early planning stages. And I went up and I said, hey, Lanny, I'm starting a conversational thing. Do you think you would make maybe do my talk show? And you were so humble, and you were like, yeah, absolutely. Just send me an email. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
But everything's on God's time.
Yeah.
Everything's on universal timing. And that was not the right time. For me, I never launched that iteration of that show. I had a lot of discovery to do and a lot of grounding to do so that I can be in my authenticity in what I'm creating. And now I've arrived there.
And congratulations on that. You know, it's here now, right? So the God's timing is always perfect. So
and then there you are, saying absolutely yes. I don't even know how we got started talking about ADHD. That I knew that you had that. It was at Culture House.
Was that where it started, or was it like social media? Because I know
it was in
Culture
person.
House. Okay,
it was one of the few times you connected.
That's what it was. Yeah.
I don't know how it came up.
Yeah.
But you mentioned it and just said, you know, I'm looking for ways, and I mentioned to you that I also have ADHD and I take medication, and everything clicked for me in that moment when I went, of course he has ADHD. All the most successful visionaries have ADHD.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's been a crazy journey, and first just being diagnosed. Because my whole life I thought something was just wrong. Like I knew something was different. I thought something was off. I was like, and I didn't know what it was. And so, yeah, it must have been during the pandemic where, you know, we're all at home and scrolling and seeing stuff, and I just kept seeing these posts about like symptoms of ADHD. I was like, man, that sounds familiar. That looks like something that I've been dealing with. That looks like something that I experienced before. And I think I finally just like went online and found it's like a therapist type of thing that you take a survey, then they interview you via Zoom, and by the time we were done, she's like, yeah, you definitely, let's dive into this more. So yeah.
My doctor, when I got diagnosed, and I was diagnosed at 17, but I didn't take it seriously for a decade. I decided to suffer for a decade. A whole decade of getting fired from jobs and trying to figure out and failed entrepreneurship endeavors and just different things. But my doctor, right at the end, looked over at me, and I was a minor, so my dad at the time, and said, you know, it's a miracle she's gotten this far with the level that she has.
And my brother, my younger brother, he was like diagnosed in school like early on. Like my brother was on Ritalin, you know what I mean, at an early age. His kind of manifested more outwardly and openly. He was very hyperactive. Like teachers could not get him to sit still at his desk, where mine was more like internal. So now that I kind of can understand it, everything that my brother was doing, bouncing off the walls all over the place, that's what's going on inside, just internally inside my brain all the time. And it just didn't manifest itself the same way. So my teachers they had no clue. They knew something was different, but that wasn't the thing. Like my brother's teachers told my mother, like, yeah, he needs to be on Ritalin. And I went my whole life and just found out a few years ago.
It's crazy how many people have had that experience, because the ADHD world, even the medical practitioners, I mean, both of my parents are doctors, and they didn't see this or know this. And my dad actually said to that doctor that diagnosed me at 17, finally, after all that time, but the kids who have ADHD who come into my office, they're like swinging off the chandeliers.
Right.
And that doctor was the one that said, sir, your daughter's mind is very hyperactive. And that's why she's so frustrated. And that's why she can't perform to those expectations. And it's just, it actually still took me, again, another decade before really realizing that it was so much more than what you think of traditionally. And also that you can be successful. I mean, it's a huge mountain to climb. But a lot of people think, well, how can I have ADHD? I got my medical degree, or, I have a very successful clothing line and I have this business that I'm running successfully. So how could I have ADHD? People with ADHD don't perform. They're lazy. They're whatever. And that's part of why we're here today, is because I think it's really important for anybody who either has been formally diagnosed or maybe suspects that they have ADHD, or that's just struggling to activate for various reasons, that they see pictures of people who are exceptionally successful and have figured out, despite the struggle, and we will talk about the struggles, how to optimize their brain to perform for their vision and for their goals.
Right. And I think that's so super important for people to see that, because you know, I'm of the belief you can't be what you can't see. And so that's actually something that is really an underlying part of even what Actively Black represents, because when people have, for a long time, I mean, even now, there's a lot of negative imagery of Black culture, especially for Black males, that is everywhere in the media, right? And so when these Black kids don't see positive images of themselves in different positions, it's hard for them to place themselves and imagine themselves being that, right? You know, my story of even being a basketball player, when I go talk to kids at these different schools, say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Every Black male that is there is, I want to be in the NBA, I want to be in NFL. And I'm like, man, why do we all think like that's the only way we can be successful? Well, when you look at what is shown as success for Black males, it's normally as a professional athlete or an entertainer.
Right.
You know, the ones who are the doctors, the engineers, the scientists, you never see them. And so, you know, that's that's a part of this. So same thing with the ADHD thing. Once I got diagnosed, and once I started doing research, I started finding out how many other like founders and how many other highly successful people had
disruptors.
Yeah. Then it kind of gives you the ammo to flip how you view it. Like first you're viewing it as like this negative thing, or like it's something that's holding me back from something. But then you're like, wait, these people have been able to be successful. This is actually a superpower that everybody else doesn't get the chance to have.
Right.
So yeah, it gives you perspective.
You know, there's a lot of backlash at times, or not backlash, controversy rather, around the term of ADHD as a superpower. And I've always been torn, because I see the validity of questioning that in the sense of, man, this thing disrupts the way that I take care of myself in my home. It disrupts the way I take care of my finances. It disrupts my personal relationships.
Yes.
It disrupts my ability to work in a conventional environment. There's
All
not
of the
one
above.
area of my life that is not impacted by ADHD. I
Right.
don't know if you share that experience.
Yeah.
Especially now, knowing, you know, kind of mapping what you know about ADHD to your past. But at the same time, there are certain things that I just know other folks can't do, that I'm doing, that just I'm doing on a level that the same way I look at them and question, hey, how do you keep your house so clean and organized every day?
Right.
They're looking at me like, hey, how do you put out a talk show and developing your music career?
Yep.
And you're working as a strategic marketing consultant for Fortune 500 companies. And what's going on with you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I just know I can do all that, but I can't clean my house. That's all I know.
Yeah, and people approach me the same way. They're like so blown away by what we've been able to accomplish, and they're trying to figure out, especially when they find out how small the team is. They're like, well, how is it possible for you to wear 20 different hats and do this? And it's like, if I didn't know that I had ADHD, I wouldn't even really know the language to even begin to explain to them how I'm able to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But now that I know, you know, I believe there is a blessing on my life that God has given me, but also like the ADHD aspect, there's no way I would be able to do what I do if I didn't have ADHD.
Right.
I know that for a fact.
What do you think is the biggest contributor that ADHD has on your success and what you do that allows you?
I think one part is the way that ADHD brains operate in chaos is something that, like, you can't really learn that or like tell somebody how to do it. It's like something that our brains operate in chaos in a way that is not normal. And so actively Black, active faith, all of my entrepreneurial endeavors have been pure chaos. Really, it's been pure chaos.
I'm laughing because I feel you so hard.
I mean, like, people think like I had this master plan and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do step A, B, and C, and it was like planned out in this way, and it wasn't. It's been pure chaos. I honestly don't know what the next week is gonna bring for Actively Black. There's something new every 48 hours, every 72 hours. There's something different that another opportunity, right? That for somebody else, I don't know that they would be able to be here on something and this happens, and then I'm able to be here on something and then this happens and it be here on something and this opportunity comes or this idea comes.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I genuinely think that maybe when you did the Wakanda collab, you tapped into the Wakanda sauce because you are in so many cities at once.
Yeah.
Doing so many things at once that genuinely it is. I completely understand why people just do not understand. Because even as an ADHDer, I'm like, how? Okay, so you got this mental health event going on over here at this football stadium, and at the meantime, you're announcing this collaboration. You just come back from the Olympics. Like, it feels like it never stops.
But it doesn't. But honestly, the crazy part about it is like that's what feels normal to me. Having to be still or like something not being like, we got to be here and we got to do this. I actually feel weird when it's not moving in that way. You know what I'm saying? And
I do. I feel like what is so crazy about that is growing up when there isn't an outlet or a structure for that.
Mm-hmm.
It can be so challenging because the reason we're so good at operating in chaos, part of it is definitely biology, but another part of it is everything, especially as an undiagnosed and with no structure around you, everything's chaotic for so long inside yourself and just feels so demanding on yourself that you spend so long in what I call survival mode.
Yes.
For so many years.
That's exactly what it is.
That you normalize a level of well, it just has to be done. I mean, you couldn't just pause your whole life growing up. You had to do things. Parents have expectations of you. Teachers have expectations of you. You have expectations of yourself. So let's just kind of go backwards a little bit, speaking of expectations of yourself.
Yeah.
Lanny Smith. NBA. Walk me through your basketball dreams.
Yeah.
And what it meant. You're how old when you get drafted to the NBA?
I actually signed as an undrafted free agent. 20. Gosh, I'm so terrible with my own age and with dates and numbers. This was 2009. So if I'm 40 now, what is that? I don't know. Do the early 20s. Early 20s. Yes. Early 20s.
So you're in your early 20s.
Yeah.
You're pursuing a basketball career for how long? When did you start playing?
I mean, I grew up in a basketball family. My mom played basketball. My father played basketball. So it was like there was a ball in my crib. You know what I mean? My mom has pictures of me 2 years old with the Fisher Price goal. You know, in where was it? Pull up diaper, whatever it was, shooting in that goal. And my earliest memories. I think I was maybe 5 or 6 when Michael Jordan won their first championship. And I was just like so enamored with what I saw. And with Michael Jordan, I was like, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. And so it was early age. I knew that's what I was going to do. My mom has kept like work from elementary school. And, one of the things they always ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, I've got the homework where I wrote, I'm going to be an NBA player. You know what I'm saying? So
I don't know exactly what percentage of people dream of being in the NBA and then actually make it to the NBA. I don't know if that statistic is available.
There's definitely, I mean, there's only 450 jobs in the NBA.
Right.
So,
and there's a lot of people out
lottery
there
ticket
who want to
chances
be in the NBA.
Yeah.
What do you think, if you had to just distill it down?
Yeah.
Other than, obviously, there's talent,
Mm-hmm.
raw talent. We can't really talk about that much. But what do you think is the distinguishing factor that puts you actually in the NBA, that allows you to make this dream come true?
Ooh, that's such a tough question, because it could be a multitude of things. And what I mean by that is, like, you've got your guys who are head and shoulders just better than everybody else in the world. Like, they are the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. So when you're talking about your Steph Currys of the world, your LeBron James, your Kobe Bryant, your Michael Jordans, these superstars of the NBA, they are head and shoulders better than the other NBA players. But the other NBA players are literally the best in the world at what they do. So it's like, the separation of somebody who is in the league and out of the league. There are so many guys who are the best in the world, but because there's only 450 jobs, they're not in the NBA.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They
So
could be in Europe, in a G League, whatever.
Yeah, and the separation between one of those guys who's on a roster and one of the guys who's not is so thin. You know what I mean? So it could be an injury, it could be your attitude, it could be being in the right place at the right time where somebody was able to see you, who, you know, like, there's so many little things that can really tip that scale on whether you get that opportunity or whether you don't. And for me, it was another one of those, like, I call them God stories, right? Yeah. So since like 6th grade, I was ranked in my age group in the country, and so I was on a team called the Houston Hoops, who were sponsored by Nike. We're traveling across the country as middle schoolers, playing against the other best of the best in different cities, right? And so you're almost treated like a pro even before you're a pro when you are at that elite level. So it wasn't like it didn't feel like a far-fetched dream to me. If I was already playing against the best of the best in my age group. So, you know, my, 8th grade AAU Nationals, I'm playing against LeBron James, who ends up becoming LeBron James. These are the guys who were in my class. So
did you actually play against LeBron James?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
No, yeah. 8th grade, you know what I mean?
Crazy.
And so it didn't feel like a fantasy to me. It felt like this is just going to be the natural progression of my life. So in college, my sophomore year, that's when I first started getting some of that attention from NBA teams, from, they had me on the draft boards, and I had that decision to make on whether I was going to leave school early to enter the draft or stay in school and improve my draft status. And I chose to stay in school to improve my draft status. Broke my foot going into the next year, had 3 surgeries on my foot. The 3rd surgery was to save half my foot from being amputated, because the doctor tried to put a screw in to fuse the broken bone together. My foot got infected. And if the infection had reached this other part of my foot, they were just going to have to amputate that part of my foot. So there's a whole backstory to this that, a lot of people don't even know. And so,
and that's not the injury that we're going to talk about.
No, this is before. That's what I'm saying.
Wow.
And so the doctors told me then, like, you probably won't be able to play basketball anymore after the foot injury. And so I was in a place where I was like, man, this is the dream that I worked for my entire life. Like, I ignored the doctor's orders when they told me to stay off of my foot. Like, I started training again, all those things. So anyway, fast forward, I end up going to the G League first. And it's one of the reasons I'm so thankful for the NBA Development League, because it actually gave me an opportunity to keep chasing my dream. I didn't get that dream I had of walking across the stage and hearing my name in the draft room. That didn't happen. I had to go another route. And so halfway through that first season in the G League, my body got back to being that player that I was prior to the foot injury. And after that first year, the Sacramento Kings called my agent and, offered me a contract to come play for Sacramento Kings. So me being there was was a miraculous moment for me anyway, because just a year prior, the doctors told me I'd never play basketball again. So here I am, I'm walking into the locker room. I see my jersey that's got the NBA logo on it, that's got my name on the back. And that just meant so much to me because I knew what I'd overcome just to be there. And I remember Coach Westphal, rest in peace, Paul Westphal, he's the head coach of Sacramento Kings at the time. After one of the practices, he pulled me to the side and he was like, during training camp, we intentionally try to fatigue guys to see how you're going to perform when you're fatigued. He's like, you ain't getting tired out here. What was your off-season training program? And I told him, I was like, man, you don't understand. A year ago, they told me I'd never play basketball again. So for me to even be here, like there's moments I feel tired, but in those moments, I remember not being able to walk.
Right.
I remember like my foot swelling up and it's like, you're never going to be able to play basketball again. So in those moments, I pull on that energy and I ain't tired no more, you know, because this is my dream.
Right.
And yeah, so it was 33 days after I signed that contract with the Kings, and I was guarding the pick and roll, and two of the big guys were fighting over each other. They tripped over themselves, and so I have two big 6'11", 7 foot, 250-pound guys fall into my left knee, tore the articular cartilage in my left knee, and ended up having to have 2 microfracture surgeries, and my career was over with. Yeah.
That's a career ender. Right
just
there.
like that. Yeah.
And what, like, the difference between the doctors who told you about the foot and this one was just clear. There was no...
No, if I'm being honest, so microfracture surgery is a 11 and a half month rehab. So you basically lose a year just rehab. So when they first told me, the reason why I had to have 2 microfracture surgeries is because after the first one, they told me it was done. And I was like, yeah, I heard that before. They told me that in college that I couldn't play anymore. So I don't care what you have to say, I'm going to play again.
It's going to happen.
And started training to come back to play again. And my knee couldn't handle the rigors of what basketball puts on your joints. You know what I mean? Like the cartilage that was damaged, your cartilage serves as a cushion, as a shock absorber for your knee. Basketball is all jumping, change of direction. You know, it's really violent on your joints. You need it. You know what I mean? And so it couldn't handle that. So they actually had to go back in and do another microfracture surgery, which was another 11-month rehab. And the second one was when I knew, like, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Yeah.
I'm putting myself in the position, and it's actually not the first time I've tried to put myself in the position, because I do know that you had a career-ending injury, and I struggle with it a lot because I never really had a lifelong aspiration or dream or anything I was working towards since I was 6 years old. So it's really, I consider myself an empath, but it's so hard to even imagine the level of pain and despair and overcoming that you had to do in that moment.
Yeah.
Being given all of your dreams and having them taken away so quickly.
Yeah.
I had an experience that I've had 2 surgeries on my spine. I moved to New York, got a job at a magazine when I always wanted to be in media, got a job writing for a magazine in New York. I'm from Canada, so that was difficult.
Yeah.
And it was for a Disney had paid $40 million to acquire this online magazine. And I got a junior position over there, and I thought, I'm in the big leagues now. I'm going to New York. Got that job, moved there within like 4 or 5 days. Interview for the job. They said, can you start Monday? Called my dad. I said, Dad, can you send me a bag? I got to find an apartment in New York. I'm not coming back. And then 7 months into the job, I herniated my lower L5S1 disc so badly that I was basically walking at a 90 degree. I had no function. I had like 70 to 80% function in my right leg.
Wow.
And there was just no way to stay there. I had no health insurance. I'm from Canada. But it was very confusing for me in that moment, because I thought, of course I had the option to go back, but I thought, why did God give this to me just to take it away like that? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
that's the closest I can resonate. And that's not even something I'd been, you know, like you said, the level that it takes to get to the NBA, and you get to the NBA.
Yeah.
So I think I want to talk to you about that moment, put myself there emotionally a little bit more, and how long do you sit in your pain?
Yeah.
And not just your physical pain. How long do you sit in grief?
Yeah. You know, I think first, like, to frame it into context, because I had a conversation with he was a doctor, and you'll see people even now, like, for some reason with athletes, people don't really respect or understand, like, everything they've had to give to be where they are in it. People almost think that it was like, oh, you were just good at basketball, or you were just good at football, and then now they're paying you millions of dollars to do it. But they don't understand, like, the sacrifice and the time and everything that it takes to get to that level. And so I remember this doctor saying something like, you know, it's just a game. Like, all of you guys, when you get done playing, it's like you're depressed and all these other types of things. But it's just you got to play a child's game. Why can't you move on? And so I said, okay, well, first, I want you to think about the fact that you're a doctor. What if the only way you could be a doctor is if you were one of the 450 best doctors in the entire world? Like, so let's say you go through all the 12, 15 years of school or whatever that it takes to be a doctor, and then you find out that, man, I'm not one of the 450 best, so now I cannot be a doctor. And he was like, damn, like, he thought about, like, how many doctors there are in the world, right? And I cannot call myself a doctor if I'm not one of the 450 best. But I was like, okay, now let's assume that you are. All of that school work, all of the sacrifices, everything you did to become a doctor. Now, let's say one day they tell you your injury, or for whatever reason, you can no longer be a doctor. That MD, we got to take that from your name. It's no longer there. And it was like, it made it real to him, like, man, like, if I lost everything that I just worked for, if I could, in an instant, I'm no longer a doctor. I can't call myself that anymore. And I think he finally understood the emotional connection to even how people see themselves. So when people become doctors, it's a great accomplishment of what you've done. But now you've even the label that you give yourself,
identity,
right? Your identity is now tied to that 100%. That thing. And for athletes, they say athletes die 2 deaths, because for an athlete, like, your best, most prime years are young. In those early to mid 20s, you start talking about a 30-year-old, 35-year-old athlete, they call you old. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're like, man, LeBron James. Now, it's miraculous what LeBron James is doing to be able to play at 40. Right. But 40 is not old. But they're like, he's an old man playing the game.
I mean, if you think about Simone Biles and what she went through in Tokyo, right? The reason why people don't understand why the stakes were so high for her is because her returning in Paris is extremely unlikely as far as age is concerned.
Exactly.
The Olympics happen every 4 years. A 27-year-old gymnast competing is much different than a 23-year-old gymnast competing.
And it's considered old, but in life terms, that's so young.
It's so young, but in physical terms, the strain you're putting on your body is greater than what anybody can know and understand.
Yes.
So of course, and after you had, I didn't know that you had recovered from another injury.
Right.
Pushed past that, still made it to the NBA with a foot like that. That's not ADHD. That's something else.
Right.
But I love that even in your moment of pain that you took time and had time that day, probably a few other days, to give that perspective to somebody else.
It was I won't necessarily saying it was important to me to give that perspective, but it was like the lack of empathy that I was feeling from him was just because he couldn't find a point of reference to actually compare it to where he could understand. So when I gave him that point of reference, it was like it all made sense to him. You know what I mean? And so when you ask, like, how long do you sit in it? Yeah. I just turned 40 and I still have moments. And I still have moments where I sit in it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Grief is not linear.
It's not. You know what I mean? And it can come at different times. Like I've talked about this thousands of times at this point.
Yeah.
And you know, Bianca will tell you, because she's normally wherever I am speaking, I can talk about it one moment and it's like, oh, great, cool, everybody claps. And then I'll talk about it one moment and I'll just start crying. Yeah. And I'm like, man, where did that come from? Like that's been years ago. Why am I? But it really is, and it wasn't just the NBA. It's that became my identity. That became who I was. And then when it's gone so suddenly, the questions are, well, who am I now? Who am I without this basketball? Who do I have any value to the world? That's a real question that not only I had, but all of these athletes have, whether they played 33 days like me, or there are guys struggling with this who played 10, 12, 15 years in the league, and then it ends and they're like, well, what do I do now? Who am I now? Right. And the money isn't a comfort. The name isn't a comfort. You're now like having to grapple with the mortality of your identity.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why they say like athletes die two deaths. It's like you're going to die one time with just whoever you were, whoever you thought you were for a period of your life, and then, the physical death. But it was tough. I was depressed. I was in a very dark place for a while, and then I couldn't escape it. So I'm from Houston. I played my college basketball at Houston. I made my name in Houston. So when I'm a grown man having to move back home with my mother in Houston, just leaving the house was an adventure, because somebody would recognize me and they'd be like, hey man, I thought you were in the NBA, or I thought ain't you supposed to be in the NBA?
Like, no, my guy, I'm not in the NBA. I'm at home with my mama.
Right. And it was a constant reminder. So I couldn't even escape it, because somebody was constantly reminding me of, man, one time that I'll never forget, this kid who had watched me since I was in college, came to my games and everything like that, and he saw me after. He's like, man, you used to be Lanny Smith.
Sorry.
Nah, like it and like he said it so convincingly, like, man, you used to be Lanny Smith. And I was like, it hit me so hard, like, damn, like, I'm still Lanny Smith,
right. But I'm not what they know as Lanny Smith.
You know what I mean?
Not what I know as Lanny Smith.
Yeah. So you definitely had those moments in that time where it's like you don't even know who you are.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense. I think like the way that, especially, maybe some people that have, for whatever reason, have to change paths or make a pivot. Obviously, life is full of them. I've pivoted 100,000 times that I could think of. But one of the key differences is, like you said, with the 450 jobs and the level of commitment that you have to have had and the drive, how many things you had sacrificed in terms of there's no room in that training journey for anything else, right? So there's the plan B. You can't even make room in your mind for a plan B if you're going to the NBA, because then you won't make it to the NBA.
You really can't. Any ounce of, it's not even doubt. It's when you realize the day that I'm not working on my game, there's somebody else who is.
Facts.
And at some point, those journeys are going to collide where there's only one spot that's left. Who's going, like, what gave this guy the edge over me?
Right.
There was those times where I wasn't working out and he was, or, I wasn't in the gym and he was. And so, it is one of those, it's a lottery ticket that you had to work 18 years to buy the ticket. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you just walked in and grabbed the ticket. It was like, it took 18 years of my life, of everything that I had to put into this, just to be able to buy the lottery ticket. That doesn't guarantee I'm going to win.
Life. Mom's life, dad's life, everybody's life revolves around this dream.
And those expectations that you carry, your dream isn't just your dream anymore. Your dream is everybody else's dream too. It's like, man, I got to make it for my family. I got to make it for all of these other reasons.
Right.
So not only was it mourning the loss of my dream, then it was the disappointment of feeling like I was a failure to my family, feeling like I was a failure to the people who were counting on me and looking up to me and expecting me to make it. It was it's heavy. Yeah, it's heavy.
So in that state and in that space, I mean, something I love about Actively Black is its slogan. There is greatness in our DNA, right? And I do believe that to be 150% true. Before you've started this brand, before you're even tapping in completely and wholly to that system of belief and to that ethos, obviously we know that making it to the NBA is a symbol of greatness, right? How do you start to tap back into whatever the inner greatness, whatever the formula, whatever sauce you feel is in your DNA? Because, spoiler alert, the NBA was not the end of Lanny Smith.
Right.
The career-ending injury did not, in fact, end Lanny Smith's career. Just one career.
Right.
At what point and how do you start to gather yourself from the space of complete depression, grief, despair, and start to make a plan B? You gotta.
For me, it was my foundation of faith that I think, I know, was able to pull me out of the darkness, to at least pick my head up to see, okay, what else is out there for me, right? And so I remember after that second surgery, when I knew it was over, I remember praying this prayer. I literally was talking to God, and I said, God, if I thought this was my purpose, I thought this was what I was put here to do. So if this is being taken away from me, I'm begging you to show me what you want me to do with my life, and whatever it is you tell me to do, that's what I'm gonna do. Like I literally prayed that prayer just like that. Interestingly enough, like if you go to my Instagram right now, one of my pinned posts, I'm literally kind of talking about this experience a little bit. It's a picture of it's one of the only NBA pictures I have of me playing in the game.
33 days.
Yeah, and in the caption I was saying, like, there was somebody who had recently at the time said, man, I wish I could be where you're at right now. And they were talking about the success of Active Faith and Actively Black and these different types of things. And I said, man, don't ever say that to me again, and don't ever say that to anybody else, because you never know what somebody had to lose to be where they are, right? Like, you don't know the losses they had to take to get to the win that they're at. And I was like, you're saying that, but at the very end of that caption, I think I say, would you be willing to give up the thing you wanted most for God to show you what he wants for you to do? Like, would you be willing, like, think about the thing you want the most. The NBA is what I wanted the most out of anything. Every birthday, when you blow out the candles and say make a wish, it was, I want to play in the NBA. Everything was around the NBA. Would you be willing to give up what you want most for whatever God has for your life? And I think that's, when I prayed that prayer, it was me like submitting and saying, this is what I wanted the most, but whatever you have for me, show me, and I'm going to do that. You know what I mean? And, you know, it was crazy, but like in 2 weeks after saying that prayer, the ideas for Active Faith started swirling around in my head. And I knew that wasn't like happenstance. I felt like God was blessing me with another dream. And in fact, everything that I was able to build with Active Faith and eventually with Actively Black, the journey that I took with the NBA, the things that I went through to get to the NBA, even the connections and the relationships that I formed in that journey to get to the NBA have all helped me in everything that I'm doing now. So, like when you look back, it's easy to connect the dots. When you look back, it's like, this makes sense.
There's no looking ahead because there's no roadmap except for God's. But
that's where faith comes in.
Yeah. As you're having these moments of clarity, the ideas start coming through. God's messages start coming through. Do you feel like your principles and your values, the ones that both of your brands Active Faith and Actively Black are very much mission driven, right? Very values driven. Do you feel like clothing is just an expression of those values, and that the values and the mission that you speak on is the purpose, or what is it that God is starting to show you in those moments?
Yeah, I reference this lyric a lot. I can't remember what song it is. Jay-Z has this lyric. He says, and if they would have told him that Hov would sell clothing, not in this lifetime, wasn't in my right mind. There's nothing that you would have been able to tell me where I would have believed that I would be selling clothing. Like it's just not anything I ever foresaw for myself.
Or like into fashion, or
I was not into fashion outside of FUBU.
Right.
Outside of that, I was just in sports apparel all the time, which I mean, makes sense, right? And so even like for Active Faith, it was like how it was downloaded to me was, what are the passions in my life, and can I find those passions and merge them to create something? And part of this, probably part of the ADHD conversation, I never saw myself being able to fit into like a corporate environment or go find a job. In school, I tested out of a lot of things early. I was in gifted and talented and stuff like that, but my teachers were always perplexed because I struggled with the mundane daily tasks or the homework, but then I would always ace my tests. And they were like, you don't do any of the homework. You're always struggling with the day-to-day stuff, but then you pass these tests. But it was like the structure of school always bothered me. And now I know why, but before I didn't know why. I just could not function in school. And so I was like, I'm going to have to be an entrepreneur. Like, I don't have no choice because I'm just not going to fit into structure. So when I thought about my passions, it was like, okay, my faith was something that was always important to me. And then sports obviously played a huge role in my life. And I was like, well, at the time, I didn't see any sports apparel brand that was faith-based. Like, I was like, well, Nike's never going to put these types of messages on their clothing, Adidas, Under Armour. And I was like, okay, so there's an opening here in the market for something that speaks to the faith-based individual that also is an athlete or loves sports. And so that's kind of where Active Faith kind of came to be. But to your point, I never thought of entrepreneurship in the way that it is promoted a lot these days and how a lot of people may look at it. And not to say that it's wrong in that way. I never looked at it like, okay, what can I build to start selling to make a bunch of money? That wasn't part of the conversation I had with God. That wasn't how I felt it. It was like there's this perfect purpose-driven, mission-driven thing, and the clothing is going to be like the vessel to deliver the message. That's pretty much how it came to me.
I love what you said about kind of going in this sort of bird's eye view of what are the things that are important to me, and allowing that to be what drives your decision making and your path forward. A lot of people who have ADHD or any type of creative brain and end up in entrepreneurship, etc., are looking for their path and kind of switch over a bunch of times, try a bunch of different things. But I think that what drives success is really the ability to pull yourself back from just what you could see right in front of you, see everything that's important to you, or the skills that you have, the values that you have, the feelings, even the insecurities that you have, just everything, my strengths, my weaknesses, my why, my purpose, and just start exploring from that space of what is the intersection of these things. And I've talked to a lot of successful people who think differently, and it's really that ability to zoom out and then find there's like tiniest little sweet spot. It's like tiny, because a lot of people wouldn't think, oh, there's a commonality between sports and my faith, right, and like not,
and it's like this unintentional I didn't I don't have a MBA. I didn't go to business school, any of those things, but like when I either read business books or tips and things on business, like one of the things that they'll tell you is finding a void in the market, right? Solving a problem that somebody else is not solving, and then build a business around that. So that's like more in the academic sense of like, how do you start a business and all those things. What's happening in our brains all the time is we're always seeing things from a different lens. We're always seeing things outside of the box, even when we're not trying to. So then when you're finding things that everybody else is overlooking, it may not even be that you're specifically trying to look for something that everybody's not looking for. Your brain is just automatically wired different to see things differently. And I now that I know what's been happening in my brain, it makes other things make sense, right? So even like with basketball, I was a point guard. I was very, other people might say flashy with how I dribbled and how I created, but it really was like, the beauty to me about basketball is like, it's so free flowing. Every play is different than the next, and it's like you're creating on the fly. You know what I mean? I'm from Texas, so I play football and all those things. But like, football is very like, we run this play, boom. We run this next play stops, boom. Basketball, you're running the play, you're getting back on defense. There could be a steal, there could be a rebound, and then you're literally creating on the fly. And I just enjoyed that aspect of basketball, being able to manipulate the defense with my eyes and throw a no-look pass because they think I'm going here. But I'm like, all those things, I didn't realize my ADHD brain actually helped me, right? And so one time I got in trouble with my coach. We ran a play and it worked. And coaches are very like, if it works, run that play again. Ran the play again, and it worked again. We scored. Run the same play, run it again. We ran this play 3 times in a row, and it worked every single time. The next time, I called a different play. And it worked, but in the next time out, coach is going off on me. He's, called this play, and it worked 3 times in a row. Why would you call a different play? Why would you call a different play? And I actually couldn't give him a reason. In my mind, it was like, man, I just want to try something else. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to tell him that, but like, that was going on in my brain. Like, man, we did the same thing 3 times in a row. Let's see if we could try something else and make it work. I didn't know what was actually happening, but now knowing that I have ADHD, that's what it was. It was like, I got bored really quick with running the same thing over and over again. Let's try something else and be creative with it. And I think that is like one of the superpowers that I've been able to tap into with creating these brands and these businesses, is that everybody else is looking one way or does things a certain way. In both of these brands, people told me I was crazy and that it wouldn't work. With Active Faith, it was the same thing. Like, well, faith doesn't have anything to do with sports.
Those are putting you in a box.
It doesn't make sense. Right. And I'm like, can you not see all of these? There's so many of these athletes who their faith has been a foundation of their life. So this speaks to them in a certain way. There's no sports apparel brand that's speaking to that part of them. So it makes perfect sense to me. Right. Everybody else thought I was crazy. And so that's just one of those things where that part of your brain, it just sees things differently.
I think everybody else thought I was crazy is a prerequisite for success in entrepreneurship.
Facts.
That's just got to be number one.
Everybody says
else thinks you're crazy, you're doing it.
Then you're doing it right. Yeah.
I also feel like you've just tapped into something so important. And I actually was saying this literally just yesterday. The whole cliche of a jack of all trades, a master of none, is the biggest farce for somebody who has ADHD.
Yeah.
The best thing about ADHD, and there are many downsides, but the best thing about ADHD is I'm about to be a master of all. What do you mean? Yeah. Because here's what happens. For me personally, you could tell me if this resonates with you, but for me personally, I find that if I'm going to do something, I have to do it all the way. I have to know everything.
There's no halfway.
There's no halfway. So I have to know everything, and that, of course, is going to make me a master. Because if you got to know everything, you're going to be a master. The problem is I also get bored. So once I know everything and I can apply it, there's so much more room in my brain to then go and master something else. But not leave behind. I still remember and have the practice of that other thing I mastered. And so people often say, oh, you can't, do all these things and be great at all of them, so you have to pick. But my ADHD has allowed me to be great,
Mm-hmm.
mastery level,
Mm-hmm.
at a lot of
multiple
different
things.
things.
Yeah, yeah.
And for you, like, you are running a business. How many people work at Actively Black?
Right now we have 3 full-time employees.
Say that one more time.
We have 3 full-time employees working for Actively Black right now, including myself.
Okay. In the year 2024, with 3 full-time employees, how many collaborations did Actively Black execute?
That's the downside to ADHD.
Olympics?
The memory, yeah. Olympics.
Allen Iverson?
Allen Iverson, Tupac,
Fubu?
Michael Jackson, Fubu,
Muhammad Ali.
I know I'm missing something.
All right,
Malcolm
even
X,
if it was just
et
that
cetera.
6.
Yeah.
And that's just one part of the business,
yeah.
right? There's e-commerce, there's
Yeah.
advertising,
Yeah.
there's fashion shows and
Yeah.
events,
Yeah.
there's active community
There's
activation.
warehouse. There's all of it. Yeah.
3 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to go back to the sort of polarizing nature of the superpower thing,
Yeah.
right? Of course, ADHD is debilitating in so many ways, and we
Mhm.
will get to that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons why I have grace and allowance for that term is because, have you ever seen a superhero movie where the person didn't need to learn and train and optimize for their superpower? They had to have that like unveiling moment, right? The spider bites and
Right.
then they're messy with it,
Right.
right?
Right.
There's a journey, there's an
Right.
origin story.
And many of them, when they utilize that superpower, there's also moments where they have to regenerate. And I think that's important to understand, because it's not as if it's this constant, like, ongoing thing, like I'm turning on my superpower and that's it. So there's oftentimes where there's like the other side of it, where you feel the burnout, or you feel mentally fatigued and all those things, because you've literally just exerted all of this superpower into something to execute on something. Your brain needs that time to reset and recharge that superpower. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So with that, we've obviously talked about all these awesome things that it helps you do.
Mm-hmm.
What is the hardest part
Yeah.
about running your business with ADHD? And what kind of obstacles and struggles have you come into?
One of them, which I think has just plagued me my whole life, business or not, has just been how absent-minded I can be at times, how much I forget things, you know what I mean? Losing things all the time. Like, and there's a certain shame that comes with it, because you don't fit into the norm of society with certain things. So there's expectations that, hey, at this age, you're supposed to be able to know how to do this and remember to do these things. And when you don't, you're kind of just seen as like either irresponsible or lazy or all those things. And so there's shame that comes with it. And before I was diagnosed, it was really a lot of internal shame, because I couldn't figure out, like, why can't I do these things? Why can't I get better at these things? Even when I know I'm trying, why can't I do it? And there are times where even people that love you and that you love and who want the best for you, and because they don't understand how it affects you, they can kind of contribute to some of that shame, right? And so, like, my mother, you know, God knows I love her, God bless her, you know what I'm saying? So many times she's like, you're too young to be forgetting stuff all the time. Like, I'm older, so yeah, it's like I'm older, so I can see why I can forget some things, but like, you're too young to be so forgetful. Why are you so forgetful? And there was this internal frustration that when you by yourself, like, man, I still do this sometimes. I'm like, damn, Lanny, why you forget stuff all the time? And you're really angry at yourself.
Yes. And
you're really frustrated. Yes. And there are things that are obvious to other people that you're completely oblivious to. Like, there's this crazy thing that I have that I thought I was the only one like this until I started seeing other people with ADHD talk about this, where like how messy I can be sometimes. And there's times where like, if I clean everything up and put it in its place, I feel anxiety because of that object permanence where something's not in my sight. My brain does not, it's like, I don't know that it exists anymore because it's not in my sight. So now everything's put up. I don't know where it is. You know what I'm saying? And that object permanence also relates to people in your relationships. And so there are times where I can be busy with something, or I've moved to LA now, so there's certain people that I don't see as often in Houston. They think, oh man, he's Hollywood, he forgot about me. They don't understand, like, my brain literally, if I'm not seeing something or somebody, it will literally live in this place of purgatory that it's not because I don't love you, I don't care about you. My brain literally doesn't have the space to remind me of these things. You know what I mean? Like, and so it can affect your relationships 100%. Because people are like, man, why didn't you remember this? My mother can recall the exact date that she got her first car, or that when she graduated from high school, she knows the date, what the weather was like that day, all those things. I'm like, Mom, I don't remember what I did yesterday.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, literally, if you ask me what you do yesterday, I'm gonna forget a lot of things that I did yesterday. And so the people who don't understand that that's how your brain works, they'll hold certain things against you because they're reacting to the norms of society, right? And so they're like, man, you forgot to call me back. You forgot to text me back. You forgot my name. All of those things. And I'm like, bro, please don't take this personal. I literally cannot.
It's a disorder.
And people don't really respect it as being a disorder. They think it's just, man, I'm not going to say her name, even though, ooh. I have a former employee who recently said something to me that it pissed me off. It hurt my feelings. I really want to say some things back to this person, but I've restrained myself. And they said, yeah, you use that ADHD excuse, but you're really just a bad leader. You're really just you know what I'm saying? And yo, I'm
about to pull up.
I can't. I'm telling you, like, there's something about the way she said what she said, because she said it in a way where it was like, yeah, that thing that you talking about, it's not valid. It's not a real thing. That's just something that you make up in your mind as an excuse. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, if you were to see somebody with a broken leg and they were limping, you wouldn't be like, man, you just making that up in your mind. You can walk fine. You can walk just fine like everybody else. Right. But because they can see that disability, they can see this thing that is harming you. Yes. People can't see your ADHD. Nope. So they discount what it actually disables you from doing. You know what I mean? And so there's people mad at me right now, and it's like, yeah, he said he's going to call me right back, or he's going to call me the next day. If I don't send it to remind me, or have somebody be like, yo, you got to sit down and do this right now, it's a lot. It's highly likely that I'm going to forget. And I had to explain to somebody, there's so many times where like your computer, you have too many programs open at one time. Then you try to open up another program, it's like not enough memory available to open up this app or this program. But like, I want you to understand, that's what an ADHD brain is like. There's so many tabs open. There's so many programs running at one time that it's not that you don't matter to me. It's not that you're not important to me. It's not that I didn't want to remember.
I can't even open your file.
I can't open another program right now. And so the people around you who don't understand ADHD make even you understanding it, sometimes that doesn't even matter. You still feel the shame.
For sure.
That's been tough. That's been really, really tough. And then running a business, I think ADHD lends itself to be more advantageous for the creative side of your brain versus the administrative side. Sure. So, man, it's bills that got to be paid. You know what I'm saying? It's finances that got to be tracked. It's so many things that
I outsource everything of that. And even with that, when I outsource the taxes and the bookkeeping and all that stuff, they're still on me like all the time. Like, hey, well, but you still need to upload the statements. I'm like, I will at some point.
Right.
When I get to that point.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So what do you, obviously this is a very recent discovery, and you're coming into your own awareness. You're going to continue to learn more about it, but you're very aware, and I love how much you've been able to piece together. And you know what? Your coworker who used the word excuse, if that's the word they want to use, it's okay to me, because what I've realized is I do need to let myself off the hook. I do need an excuse. And there's a difference between an excuse and an explanation. An excuse has negative connotations. But that woman, or the others who do that, because we all have them, if she can say there's nothing in her life where she falls short, where she may need or have an explanation or an excuse or a reason, then shout out to her.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. You're
but
one of one.
There's no one on planet Earth that doesn't have some struggles and some shortcomings and some differences that can't be explained by something, even if it's not a condition that's in the DSM, even if it's just how they are, who they are. You know? And to the shame that we feel inside ourselves, to have somebody outside of us echo that, your worst idea of yourself. Because on your worst day, there are probably days you thought, I'm a bad leader. Right? Yeah, for sure. Even though in your heart you know you're not. But to hear that probably the worst thought you have about yourself said back to you by somebody else, like, that's deeply painful, and it's an experience that so many of us resonate with. My biggest struggle is time blindness. I can count the number of times that I have been on time. I'm not talking early. I mean on time. In my life, on less than 2.
I'm probably right there with you.
I can't do it.
And the crazy thing is, that's another one of those things where, like, the shame that comes with it, right? Because I find myself apologizing so much for it.
It's like, I do respect your time. More than anything in the world, if I could do it, I would do it.
Yes, I just have this time blindness, and it's crazy because, like, I have to lean on Bianca, I have to lean on B a lot, and I tell her, like, hey, listen, if I'm in one of my modes, like, and I'm thinking that I can fit this stuff in, I need you to actually, like, pull me to the side and be like, hey, I'm not trying to tell you that you can't, because I know sometimes she feels hesitant to tell me that I can't do something. That's like one of them things where it's like, no, I can do whatever, you know what I mean? And that superpower gets you in trouble sometimes because it allows you to perform in a way that ordinarily people can't do, you know what I mean? So there's been times, and now I think back, like, that's why you were able to do that in school. There were times where I did wait till the night before to do the whole project, and I killed it.
Unfortunately, every time I've done that, I kill it, and it's like this positive reinforcement that I could continue.
That's the way that, you know what I'm saying?
That's the way it's gonna be good.
But sometimes that'll get you into a jam that's harder for you to get out. You know what I mean? So, like, you bring up all those collabs and everything, like the Olympics. So one of the things that we've done in previous years, we've done New York Fashion Week, and it's in September. The Olympics was started in July, and then it goes through August. I don't know how long. I was like, yeah, we still doing New York Fashion Week this year. You know what I'm saying? And B was like, I don't know. And I'm like, nah, when we get back from the Olympics, then we can just jump right into, New York Fashion Week. And, like, she had to have a moment where she really sat me down, showed me the calendar, and counted those days out for me, where it was like, when we get back from the Olympics, it's going to be this date. New York Fashion Week is this date, which means you're going to have 7 days to do this. And then, and I was like, damn, how the hell was I thinking we were going to do New York Fashion Week?
Right.
It's impossible.
It's so important to have people like that. And we're going to bring Bianca up because I really want to chat with her a little bit about the experience of being your complementary partner. And we now know that she is both your business partner and your life partner, which I think is so beautiful because, you know, we need a well-rounded support system in all areas of life. And it's hard to find that. And so I'm really excited to chat with her about it. But one of my favorite things that I've ever been told about time management, and I've yet to be able to implement it, and sort of a partner that reminds you, is rather than saying the amount of minutes that it is having someone convert it into seconds. So when you think you have 10 minutes out the door, you're starting to get ready and your partner says, hey, we have 10 minutes, or like in New York Fashion Week, you're going to get back and it's going to be this day. Instead of saying we have 5 minutes, it's like, well, actually, did you know that that's 300 seconds? And then it's like, oh, I get 300 seconds. That's not that much time.
Right.
Because we'll convince ourselves how much we could do in 5 minutes because you've seen yourself get stuff done in 5 minutes that other people would need 5 hours to do.
Yeah.
But 300 seconds.
It changes how you see that. You know what I mean?
That's what that story with Bianca reminded me of, because sometimes you just need somebody from the outside to say, hey, you know.
Right. And do it from a place of love, and do it from a place like of having that empathy and understanding, because you know, in prior relationships, that the ADHD caused a lot of issues, right? And so, and the same thing with friends and family and things like that. It's like, you know, your partner wants you to remember to do certain things. Hey, make sure you're doing these things, and you're constantly forgetting them, and then they internalize that as you don't care about me or my desire for you to do X, Y, Z, and it's like, no, I really just forgot. And it's like, well, you don't care enough to remember for me. If they can't understand that there's literally something that is impeding your ability to remember those things, or that you have that time blindness, then they're internalizing that as you just don't respect the relationship, and you don't care enough about me, and then that just becomes a whole nother issue. So it is very, very important to have people around you that, even if they don't fully understand it, they hold that space and grace for you,
and they can hear it and sort of start to see as you get more self-aware. I found the same thing. My current partner, I just have to say maybe once, maybe twice, certain ways that my ADHD is manifesting and causing stress in my life. And then I'll notice now, like, I've said this thing, and then he kind of steps in and sees what it does. So for example, for me, with keeping the house clean and organized, I like a clean and organized place. It makes me feel good. Right. And then in those moments where there's a tornado and I look around, I'm so overwhelmed. There's so much emotions. There's so much shame. It's blocking me from doing anything. And I explained one day to my partner, he didn't ask me, he never says to me, oh, why is it? But I explained to him, I said, hey, like, I wish I could get started on cleaning this stuff up, but I'm just so overwhelmed that I even caused this, that I just can't, and I can't do anything else.
The executive function block, that is probably one of the biggest struggles with the ADHD, is like when you do have that sense of overwhelm where it's like, I can't do anything.
I'm gonna
like,
just freeze.
you freeze. And that's definitely been an issue. Especially with even with the business thing, because the way this thing has been moving, it's been growing so fast that I've been in a constant state of overwhelm for a few years now.
In those moments of shame, battling with yourself, and feeling like everything is crumbling around you, it's so important to have, whether you're in business and it's your teammate and your partners and your staff, have a really holistic understanding of who you are and how you function, and how they can step up and complete some of those things and allow you to be the creative and the visionary. And that doesn't mean you're not running the business, because you obviously are,
but really allow your strengths to thrive and feel like I'm taken care of, and I can let go on the things that they're just taking up too much of my time, my energy.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, even ADHDers who are making it work in a corporate environment. For me, I mean, I was fired from every job that I had all the way up until I was 28 years old.
Wow.
And 6 months was the longest I ever worked somewhere. And I thought for sure, I mean, I did other things to try to make money because I was like, I don't really know what else.
Yeah.
I might just be
Yeah.
one of those. I might just be cooked.
Yeah.
And then I found this place to work that just made me feel safe. It's very rare, but all of a sudden I found myself disclosing and talking about my brain, and they were so excited about how to use me, and they created a position for me.
Wow.
And all these things. And so whether it's in work or in life, and in your case, the support system you found is the intersection of the two, which is beautiful. I think it's so important for our kind to, you know, I mean, sayonara to the girl who said that to you. I'm so glad that you said former employee, because we can't afford to have those types of people around. I've cut a lot of people out of my life.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm unwilling to, you know, grow or adapt. I grow a lot. I change every day. But I'm unwilling to be told that when I am exerting myself at my absolute 100% maximum and doing the very best that I can in life, that I'm failing you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm already feeling like I'm failing myself.
Yeah.
I don't need another voice.
Yeah.
I don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I'm going to be working on time blindness. I swear I'm going to master it one day, you know? But I want riders who are with me on that process.
Yeah.
Not the ones who are like making jokes out of it and telling me that, you know, they don't invite me places anymore because they don't think I'm going to.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have to be there then.
Yeah.
Right? So with that, I would love to invite your support system up and chat a little bit about the experience of being beside somebody brilliant and complicated. Bianca Winslow, welcome to the couch. ADH-Chievers. So one of my favorite things to say, I know you refer to the actively Black fan base or consumers as the tribe. I love the expression, your vibe attracts your tribe. I think for ADHDers, that's especially important because, look, as you get to know yourself more, as you become more aware of who you are and how you're living and your strengths and your weaknesses, you need people by your side who are on that same vibe and frequency as you and understand who you are and support you just as you are and help you grow, hold up the mirror, but in a way that minimizes the shame and maximizes the excitement that goes into the journey of all this. And why don't you introduce Bianca? I would love for you to tell the ADH-Chievers audience a little bit about who she is.
Yeah, Bianca Winslow. This is the this is Queen Bee. This is not only is she the Black woman behind Actively Black, but you know, I say this often, like there's absolutely no way that we're able to do what we do, accomplish what we accomplish. I get a lot of spotlight because of that, but there's just no way that I can do that without her. You know what I mean? So this is the engine. This is the engine behind Actively Black, behind everything that we've been able to accomplish. So I don't know what, can't really even give it a title because she does so many different things.
First lady feels wrong. It's more than that, right?
Yeah.
Co-pres? I don't know.
all of the above. So,
right.
Yeah.
I think there is something to be said for the old cliche of like behind every great man, there's an even greater woman.
Or beside him.
Yeah. Thank you for that correction. What?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit, Bianca, about your journey in business, in life. What do you feel is the biggest way that you are able to contribute and
and sort of round out this partnership so that you can be a successful business?
Well, first I want to state that I'm a former collegiate athlete. So playing basketball, I feel like has helped me a lot, dealing with Lanny and his ADHD. Moved out to LA January 2016, did the whole corporate thing. Wasn't really for me. So I was really just trying to find myself. 2020, obviously the world shut down. Coming out of that, well, helping him launch Actively Black, but coming out of that, I was actually hired by one of my mentors, Ingrid Best at Combs Enterprises, working with Soraka and DeLeon on the marketing side. And it was a journey. It was a great learning experience, but when it was time to go, it was time to go. And I think the timing of where Actively Black was at the time, it was a good time to pull me over full time. I've obviously learned a lot being at Combs Enterprises. That really helped me be in the position that I am in now with Actively Black. It's been a journey, but I wouldn't complain nonetheless. But so yeah.
It's beautiful. And do you find that, what is the sauce that makes, you said you have 3 people on the team, right? So we're 2 of 3. Like this is the head office.
Yeah, shout out to my mom. My mom's the
Your
third.
mom is the 3rd.
Yeah,
Holding it down.
Oh! So with that kind of bare bones structure, what is the sauce or the dynamic, if you had to kind of distill it down, that makes this work? What are each of your...
I think for me, it's more so like, it was kind of like a plug and play. I'm a very organized, structured person. Like, he teased me all the time. In college, I had like a notebook for each subject, color coordinated. My calendar was like up to date and everything. And it kind of just transitioned over to my professionalism now, where it's like, I know you guys were talking about time blindness earlier, and I'm just like, with him, I have to like now mentally like trick myself. Like, if it's time to leave for the airport and we need to leave like an hour before, I'm like, okay, maybe 2 hours. I should start telling him, okay, we gotta go. Because then he'll run downstairs and he'll try and hurry up and pack. But I just think like organization is a big part of what I like to just do in general. I like to have everything where it needs to be. But then it's also like, being his partner, I have to understand, like, if the house is a mess, like, it's okay. Like, just deal with it. It's not gonna like, the world's not gonna blow up or anything. It's just like, just deal with it almost in a way. And just adjust to how he thinks, how his mind works. Like, if a cabinet's open, like, don't be upset if he like forgets to take the trash out. Like, just go do it yourself.
Like, cabinets is open. Like, cabinets open. Honestly, this is, people ask me all the time. They're like, how would I know? Like, should I go seek a diagnosis? And I have literally said, are your cabinets open?
Yeah.
If your cabinets is open, if your partner's like, why cabinets open?
You need to go see somebody.
Go see a doctor.
You need to go see somebody.
Yeah.
Your cabinets is open. Go see a doctor.
Yeah.
And with him being diagnosed with ADHD and with everything that he shares with me from like Instagram, it makes me take a second to like step back and like to understand like how his mind works, like how he thinks, etc. And it's just like, I have to like educate myself and know that he's not doing it on purpose. I know he said he has time blindness, but one thing I want to give him credit for is that he always remembers my birthday. He calls it Hell Week. And he's always stressed around that time. And I'm like, you don't have to be stressed. Like, I appreciate you remembering my birthday, but it's just like, I don't know. I think like, I just appreciate that about him. And I think he knows that as well, because I know like there's times where we forget, he forgets he has a call, or we have to be somewhere at a certain time. But like, for him to remember my birthday, like, I really appreciate that. But then it's also like, let's not forget about the other things in life that
we can only hold space for
so much. Yeah.
Right.
What's the kind of payoff in that for, I know a lot of ADHD people who get into relationships, have that insecurity or that nervousness of, one, being accepted, but is what I bring to the table enough to compensate,
to make up for all the
ways
stuff.
that I've fallen short for other people in my life, and kind of trusting themselves and then trusting the partner. I guess, what are we were talking about superpowers, like, what's the payoff of like, yeah, the cabinets is always open, but
he always makes time for me. whether we're on like a business trip, like he'll always make sure like, okay, let's get away, let's unplug, let's have date night, etc. So that really pays off. Little gifts here and there are always also nice. What else? It's just like the little things that he does that I don't take for granted because I know he has so much on his table and he's always so overwhelmed. It's just like the little thing that he does I really appreciate, and just him just making time for us making time for me outside of work means a lot.
What are some of the ways, outside of like administrative, she helps me with my calendar. What are some of the ways that she helps to ease your overwhelm? And that like a partner of somebody that has ADHD, do you think could take and learn from how Bianca nurtures you?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, one thing she said earlier about like how she educates herself. I'm constantly sharing something on Instagram like, oh, these things are what ADHD people deal with, and I'll share it with her. And the fact that she takes the time to actually like read those things and learn, that means a lot to me. You know what I mean? Because that means like she's actively trying to understand how my brain works and then figure out like, okay, how do I support that? You know what I mean? In a way. So I think that's really dope. The other thing is, because our brains are like, I tell her the only time my brain is not going 1,000 miles an hour is when I finally do get a chance to go to sleep. That's the only time.
But even then, sorry, cut you off. Even then, recently, 2 nights ago, he was like, "Oh, that's a dope idea," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" So like, even his sleep, his mind is like still going. And he's a night owl, so he always goes to sleep late, and I'm always up early, and there'll be like a call that can get rescheduled if need be, but he'll wake up and he's like, well, why didn't you wake me up? But I'm just like, I know you need your sleep, so I'd rather you sleep. And if, like I said, if that call or meeting can be rescheduled, I'll just try and reschedule it, because like you said, when he sleep, his mind is somewhat shut off. So like I'm like just trying to make sure he gets the rest that he
then also
get.
that overwhelm sometimes leads to like the trouble in making decisions sometimes, because your brain is making just hundreds and hundreds of decisions all the time. So then when it's time to make certain decisions, you've got that decision fatigue. You know what I mean? So then I
call it analysis paralysis.
Analysis paralysis. So whether it's a design, and we also have that perfectionism thing where it's like, can't just do it halfway, so it's got to be perfect. So I might make 10 different versions of the same design, and it'll be a small detail that somebody else probably wouldn't even care about. And I'm like, all right, B, which one? I got to send it to you. Which one do you like the best? Because my brain cannot decipher between which one of these I should go with. So she's like, every step of the way, there's something where she's contributing or she's doing something that's like helping me to hone in on that superpower. It's like I'm using the superpower to create this, to come up with these ideas, but then she's kind of like helping to focus it in on, okay, now here's the action step that comes with it. So,
I love that. What a blessing. What a blessing. I think it's so important. And speaking of teamwork, obviously with the way that Actively Black is growing, a team of 3 is probably only sustainable for so long.
Yeah.
What is it that you're going to need from people who are going to want to work with you in the future? Or, let's say I'm starting tomorrow. What do I need to know about your brain, your dynamic, that's going to support the success of scaling the operation? How do you see scaling and bringing more people into that?
Yeah, the difficult part about this, and we have these conversations all the time, is one of the biggest things is trust, right? Because I don't know if this is an ADHD thing, but almost everybody that I have met that has ADHD are empaths. It's like it's something about that. So
I think if I had to guess, it's because of how much we needed to be seen and felt for our struggles. And often you give out what you need.
Yeah.
And just to jump in on that, I try to make sure that we celebrate our small wins. Like when we reached 4 years last year in November, I made sure that we were at the warehouse working. It was Black Friday. Obviously, that's our anniversary for Actively Black. I just got like a little cake made with like little moments from the journey. And I just felt like just those little moments, or just going out to dinner, or just celebrating his birthday, whether it's just balloons at the house or his favorite dessert or whatever the case may be. I just think that it's really important that I try and make sure I celebrate his wins, because I know like his mind is like on to the next thing, on to the next thing. So I just want him to know that I see him and I see all the work that he's putting in, and it doesn't go unnoticed. Yeah, and it's like it becomes that positive feedback loop, right? Because when you have somebody who is putting in that effort, who is understanding whatever, it just like encourages me to not only fully embrace who I am and how my brain works, but then that's also why it's easy when we're on a business trip. I'm gonna make sure that I'm taking her out on a date or doing whatever. It's like we're kind of feeding each other in that way. And it really is a team effort in the truest definition of it. You know, we, like she said, she played basketball, I played basketball. One of the things you learn about team sports is your teammates are all different, and you have to treat them differently. Not from an equality standpoint, but there were some teammates I could like get on and yell at, and that would motivate them, and they would go. But another teammate, if I did that, they would shut down. So I knew I had to talk to them a certain way, like, hey man, we need you to pick it up. And so us bringing our sports backgrounds to being, we're really teammates with each other. So she knows sometimes there's a certain way I got to deliver this message to Lanny for him to get it. That's right. And you know, so yeah, that's been really
bringing
dope.
somebody in or people in who are as close as life partners or mother, and starting to just that's challenging for you guys.
Well, the trust thing, what I was talking about before, is because I'm an empath, because I truly like, a lot of people say I'm too nice. You can be people pleasing as a ADHD, or trying to make sure that nobody is upset with you, because a lot of other times you're giving people reasons to be upset with you. So you're almost trying to prevent people from being upset with you. For us, that has caused a lot of heartbreak and a lot of disappointment, because we have let people in who we shouldn't have, or we have given multiple chances when we shouldn't have, when they've already shown that, okay, they can't be trusted with these things. I'm like, well, let's try to give them another chance. You know what I mean? Because I'm always asking for another chance. And that has proven to be a very volatile place with where we are. We're not three people because we want to be just three people. We are in a state of overwhelm where we actually need that help, right? But there's a couple of factors that are playing into it. One, we're building something that hasn't been built before in a way that it hasn't been built. So you need people to understand that vision, or if they can't see it, to trust you to follow that vision, even if they can't see it. That's been very difficult. And then the other thing is, if I'm just keeping it real, is the appearance of how big the brand is makes people think that it's something that it's not. So they come in with preconceived ideas of, they got this much money, so I'm gonna ask for this type of salary.
Right.
We've had people ask us for $700,000 salaries. Yeah.
They never work at a startup before.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? But then they're like, we saw you at the Olympics. We saw the Wakanda event, or we saw this.
Yeah, those people are trying to pay you in brand capital. They don't.
Right. So they don't. So I think especially when you think of startups, right? So like you think of the beginnings of Meta, Facebook at the time. You had these guys who were with Zuckerberg, who were in the dorm room with him, that were building it together, right? So they're all in the inside looking at it, building it. We've been in a position where we launched this during the pandemic. It was just me and her, right? So we've been looking at things from the inside this whole time. Other people have been seeing it from the outside looking in. So their ideas of what this is informed based on what it looks like, where we're in it. We don't.
Which is really the nature of, all social media and everything like that. And of course, to be successful, you have to, present. Not that you guys are inauthentic. You're very authentic. The milestones you present have actually happened. There's no capping. But obviously, you're not sharing the intricacies and the details of your financial statements and your other things. You're presenting, you know, the growth of this movement and this phenomenon. And of course, people have their perceptions
and there are people who you now kind of become a target, right? You become a target. I think that's one of the things we're struggling to adjust to is, and we didn't know it. We didn't know it at first. I had people come up to tell me like, hey bro, like it's time for you to get some security type of thing. I'm like, man, what are you talking about? Because we're on the inside. We cannot see what actively Black looks like to other people. So we were unaware of that. Then we were in Atlanta for Revolt World. Mm-hmm. Just oblivious. We just out there. People just running up to us. Oh, y'all the founders of Actively Black. Yo,
scary.
You're Lanny Smith, boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, hold up. Like, I wasn't prepared for that.
Right.
Basketball Lanny died a long time ago. I knew when I stepped out of my house when I was playing basketball, I expected people to recognize me. That was part of my life. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Once that was done, I never expected to be in a position where I could walk out of my house and somebody was going to recognize me and know who I was. So that's been a little
scary.
That's been a little scary, right? Because no matter what city we're in, no matter where we are,
you're a public figure.
That
was never like the goal.
I don't even
like that. It wasn't
the
goal. No, for sure.
I don't even like that.
It's weird. Social media, like, it creates, you know, celebrity out of stuff that historically did not create celebrity. Of course, you know, people. I don't even think back in our day when we were growing up, like you said, FUBU, right? Like, I learned who Damon was later in life.
Like Shark Tank was kind of like where people really kind of
that wasn't. Back in the day, these brands weren't, unless they were named after the person. Yeah. And even then, you know what I mean? Like, I still couldn't tell you up until later on, Ralph Lauren, like, I couldn't tell you.
Now I know what he looks like.
Now you know who that guy is, right? But social media is such a different space. Yeah. And now that you guys have decided also to love out loud and have this, you know, there's a certain thing that people are going to see. It's a brand building ethos that's essential to the progression of the brand, but also has its downsides for sure. And that is definitely, you know, you have to be very careful about who you keep around you and have around you. And especially, again, hiring people that, yes, can complement what you need when it comes to how you are running the business, but also that, just can build that same. You don't want to have another incident where somebody's saying what your former coworker.
I think the biggest thing learning that we've kind of taken away from some of those experiences is that at this point, it's going to be impossible to find somebody who is going to see this from the true startup kind of nature that it is. Yeah. So I have to stop expecting that, right? Mm-hmm. So now it's kind of on us to find the right people or person that can almost be that layer of protection for us, that can be the one who is going to ensure that they're looking at everything and who we're bringing in and holding them accountable in ways that maybe I'm not going to because I'm too soft at heart.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. So now I've got to, instead of me expecting other people to come in this a certain way, I've got to find the right people who are going to set that standard that
and
we can
that
trust
objectivity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because it's too close.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. I'm just gonna kind of aim towards wrapping up with one of the reasons we haven't talked a lot about really the brand and the mission is because, you know, I mean, I personally have watched you do a ton of interviews and read them all, and I know there's a lot of information out there, and you've talked about that journey a lot, and I encourage everyone who's watching to definitely dive more into the brand of Actively Black and the story behind it and its brilliance. But one of the key pillars that I really do want to talk about is the name. Mm-hmm. And you talked about the perception that people have that it's this huge brand or that it has tons of capital. And yet on the other side, something I've heard you express on social media and in other places multiple times is that even people from the community will often encourage you to change the name.
Yeah.
or not have black in the name
Yeah.
because it's not scalable
Yeah.
or it puts you in this only plan, non-black people. So first and foremost, is this something that can be debunked? Do non-black people purchase and wear actively black?
All the time, 1,000%. I mean, white, Asian, Hispanic. I mean, we've seen everybody wearing actively black, and everybody is welcome to wear actively black. The purpose is to uplift and reinvest back into the black community. Anybody can support that mission. You know what I'm saying? It's like, unfortunately, what has transpired here recently in Los Angeles, a lot of people have lost their homes due to this fire, right? But there are people who are not in Los Angeles who are sending donations, who are helping out, who are praying, who are supporting that, right?
Yes.
Now, you didn't lose your home. You weren't in the fire, but you are now helping somebody else that did experience that. It's really the same thing. You don't have to be black to support a cause that supports black people.
Because you're a mission-driven brand, so it's not about the clothing and the label. If I buy actively black as a non-black person, I'm investing in the message.
We were out donating thousands of dollars worth of brand new stuff to these families who've lost everything, right? As a business, that's inventory, right? The only way we're able to actually do that is because of the amount of people who support us so consistently and constantly that we've got revenue coming in. I can take that hit on this gear that we are donating because so many people are supporting Actively Black. So it's literally all of this support is why we're able to do what we do in the community. And that support can come from anybody, no matter what you look like, where you come from, any of that. And one of the things that I continue to say this over and over and over again, I've never gone to a Mexican restaurant or Italian restaurant and saw people standing outside saying, well, I'm not Mexican, so I can't eat here. I'm not Italian, so I can't eat here. You go inside, you enjoy and you appreciate somebody else's culture. And then you leave and you're still you, but you appreciate somebody else's culture. It's the same thing.
Do you think there's a sensitivity around the idea of doing that specifically in black communities just because of, whether it's appropriation or exploitation? Because, I mean, I know you started this brand in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And I do think a lot of people learned a lot of things at that time. And of course, as you've mentioned many times, we knew that many brands and people were posturing and then they were going to go back to square one. But I personally do work in marketing for Fortune 500 companies. I work in influencer marketing. And I will tell you that I do not get a brief since 2020. Not one single brief from the brand that does not demand that we now have diversity in all the brands that I work with. So in the wake of George Floyd's murder, there was a lot of posturing. Obviously, we knew that brands were stepping in to capitalize somewhat on this movement. There was questions as to the longevity of that support and whether or not this was just acting for the sake of, trendiness or not being called out as a brand for not doing enough. And believe me, I work in marketing. I experienced a lot of posturing and a lot of really ridiculous questions that I did not want to answer, and also a lot of hypocrisy because I had been standing in the rooms that I've been standing in for many years prior and saying, hey guys, just because your demographic maybe you don't think is black people, it doesn't mean that you can't have this black influencer because her audience is actually made up of the people that you want to reach. So and I had been fighting for that. But now I will say I have experienced a shift and a change. It's not as prominent as it was in 2020, but if I went back to a brand with a roster of only white influencers, the majority of the brands that I work with would say we need to look a little bit deeper elsewhere, please. Which I love. Do you think that there is a little bit of trepidation or fear at all from people, even within the black community, who say like, oh, it's going to pigeonhole you, for people to proudly display or wear something like this for the risk of criticism that like, oh, it's not authentic? Or
I can hold grace for that, but at the same time, the examples of why it doesn't make sense to me outweigh that so much, and just in a couple of things. So one, when you talk about FUBU, right? I remember NSYNC and Britney Spears wearing FUBU. You're talking about a brand that literally said "for us, by us," right? Yes. And I am of the belief that Black culture is one of America's biggest exports, right? And what Black culture creates or what it deems as cool ends up becoming cool to everybody else eventually anyway, right? Yes. So think about hip hop. It's one of the largest art forms in the entire world. There are breakdancing competitions going on in Seoul, South Korea. You know what I'm saying?
In the Olympics now.
In the Olympics.
Maybe not anymore.
Yeah. But when you think about how that started, the authenticity of the root of that were Black and brown kids who were creating something to express themselves in the conditions that they were in, and it wasn't like we're making this for the world. They were like, we're making this for us.
Right.
The world ended up adopting it. So yes. It's the same thing. We're making this for us, but the world can still appreciate what we're creating, and it ends up happening anyway. So when you look at a lot of these creators on these platforms, on TikTok, on Instagram, on this, a lot of trends that are coming out of the Black community end up becoming what is viral and what everybody else is taking anyway.
That's right.
The stance I'm taking is I'm just not hiding it. I'm just saying out front what it is. You know what I mean? And I think that authenticity can scare people at times. And I think also some of that is related to the ways being Black or what Black represents has kind of been demonized for so long. And that's where I bring back that point about you can't be what you can't see. When so many of the imagery, when so much of the commentary around what being Black meant was tied to something negative,
yes,
other people take that on. And then even Black people who feel like they have to compromise themselves to move up in corporate America or to do whatever, they take on those same negative connotations of what it means to be Black. So in the beginning, it was Black people telling me, don't name it actively Black.
Right.
There were Black executives from Nike, ex-executives from Nike who were telling me, man, I like this idea, but man, don't name it that. It's going to prevent it from being successful.
Was that fuel for you?
Oh my God. That made me feel like that's exactly why I have to name it that, because we have to reclaim and redefine what being Black, what being actively Black means for us, and not accept the definition of that from people who are not Black.
I think too, that's why the collaborations that you've done are so important, because you are continuing to show that being Black is a storied experience with so much greatness. And whether you're Black or not, you're gonna be down to wear a shirt with Muhammad Ali on it. That's a great, right? White people could wear a shirt with Muhammad Ali. You could be a Muhammad Ali fan and not be Black.
Right.
You could be a Bob Marley fan and not be Black. You could be all the collaborations that you've done, I think kind of remind people to pull back but while still having the name on it. It sort of forces you to be like, oh, but I really want that.
Yeah. But even when you dissect that, right? When you look at the life of Muhammad Ali, who Muhammad Ali was and what he stood for, he was very explicitly like, I'm Black. I am speaking up for Black people. I am against hate. I'm against racism. I'm against discrimination. So like who he was and what he represented, the interesting thing is like when you look at history for some of these figures, when they were alive, when they had their voices, they were actually hated. Martin Luther King right now, we're coming up on Martin Luther King Day. You can see everybody and their mama posting Martin Luther King quotes, right? But like if you actually go back and you can look this up, he was voted as the most hated man in America at one point. Martin Luther King, the guy who was talking about, I want us to be together. I want us to love each other.
Well, that's very
peaceful.
controversial.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So I also think there's something to it where deep down, a lot of these people, they know what's wrong is wrong, and they want to be able to celebrate the greatness of Muhammad Ali and Deion Sanders and whoever it is, but their internal prejudices is what kind of holds them back for until those people lose their voices or their lives. So when Muhammad Ali's disease took his voice from him, all of a sudden he became beloved by America. You got to understand, this is a man who they were saying was a traitor to America, who at the Olympics in Atlanta, they chose him to light the Olympic torch to represent the United States of America. But when he was talking what he was talking, they were saying he was anti-American.
Shut your mouth and play the sports.
You see what I'm saying? So I just, and then the other analogy that I haven't used yet, and I want to make sure I say this, we talk about this all the time, is how many people are walking around wearing Dallas Cowboys jerseys that never played for the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah.
But you're cheering for a team that you love, even though you've never actually been a part of the team. You never ran out on that field. You never caught one ball. You never scored one touchdown. But you are a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan, right? If you looked at Actively Black like this was just the jersey of a team that you're cheering for, then you can understand that I've never been black. I've never been in any of these situations. But you know what? I'm cheering for them. I'm pulling for them. That's why I'm supporting. That's why I'm wearing it. If you just look at it in that simple context, you don't have to be black. You don't have to have any of our experiences, but you could still cheer for them. And if you're not, then you actually need to stop dissecting or trying to figure out why it's named Actively Black, and you actually need to do some internal work.
Well, allyship is active work, and that's it's not called passively black. Right? It's not just about what you're born with. It's active work. I love that. I love that so very much. I guess the last question I'll ask you on this is, the last I checked, and correct me if I'm wrong, the valuation of this brand, and I know that doesn't mean that's how much cash flow y'all have, but the valuation of this brand is somewhere in the 30 million plus. I think that's 2 years old even.
Yeah,
so.
that's a couple
You know what I
years
mean?
old.
That's a couple years old. So we going up from, but you are, a $30 million plus valuation of a brand. That's a pretty big thing. Normally, my understanding is at that type of valuation, with the high profile collaborations that you guys have had, this would be a no-brainer for investors to come in and bring capital. Have you struggled with this? And has there been explicit discussion from an investment perspective about the name?
Yes. And yes. We sat in on a meeting with a black investor who loved everything that they saw that the brand has been built. This particular investor actually was present at one of our New York Fashion Week shows, and you could see the pride in his face when he was beaming about, oh man, just the way that it represented the culture. I felt seen. Did all of that, and then when it came down to it, he's like, but what do you think about like changing the name? And it's... How
long had you been Actively Black when this was proposed?
Oh, this meeting was last year. Right?
Changing the name.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think there's this ceiling in people's minds of what a black brand can be and how big it can be, because somebody's going to fact check me when they see this. I think there might only be one black company that is Fortune 500 or that's a publicly traded company. One of those two.
Not enough.
It might only be one, right? And so if people have never seen a black-owned brand scale to that level, then it's hard for them to move past what has always existed to believe that it can happen. So I try not to take it personally, even though I still do. That's another ADHD thing, is that hypersensitivity.
Yeah.
But I think it's just their fear, their lack of vision of being able to see a black-owned brand that is purposely celebrating black culture scale to those levels. And so to me, I take that as the challenge of like, that's why we have to do this and show that it can happen. But the tribe believes And so, you mentioned earlier about like the crowdfund that we did.
Yeah. Let's tell, just to contextualize.
Yeah.
So you started a crowdfund.
Yeah.
To give the tribe, the actively Black tribe, and consumers the opportunity to invest in the brand.
Yeah.
That's for them, and that's a for us by us moment. That's a really Where did that idea come from, and what have the results been so far?
Came from two places. One, a lot of people don't know this, but during President Barack Obama's presidency, he passed the Jobs Act, which is what allows you to raise capital as a startup brand from non-accredited investors. So the best way to think of it is like, everybody's familiar with GoFundMe, where you're sending a donation. What this crowdfund is, it's not a donation. You're actually investing in the brand. And for the longest time, because of, classism and a bunch of things that we get into later, people haven't had access to invest into startup brands when they're just starting. Like, no regular people got a chance to invest in Facebook.
Sure.
They had to wait until it became public. What people don't realize is all the big money, all the wealth is made from those people who are investing early, and then it goes public, and then, it makes all these millionaires.
I know the first people that worked at this tech company or
and got that equity.
1,000%. So you're giving you're democratizing equity.
So now we have the ability to allow the people who are actually responsible for the growth of the brand, because they're the ones buying the product. They're the ones getting on social media and sharing about it. Now you get a chance to not just wear the brand and buy the brand, but you get a chance to own a part of it. And so when we kept hitting those closed doors from all these investors who couldn't see the vision or believe the vision, we were like, you know what? Let's just focus on the people who do believe in the vision, which is the tribe. And so now, we can't make any promises, right? There's no guarantees in this startup world at all. But at least now those people, when Actively Black becomes what we believe it's going to become, they get to actually enjoy the financial, or at least the equity increase in value.
Right. They got the early share price.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so a lot of people also don't know that this came to be because the Oculus headsets, you remember the Oculus headsets? So the guy who actually invented that and started that,
is that Larry?
No, it wasn't. I can't remember his name when Facebook, when Meta bought it from him for $1 billion. But he did a crowdfund that was similar to GoFundMe. So all these people gave money to get the prototype built. But then when he sold it for $1 billion, they didn't get any of that money.
Wow.
Because they didn't have any equity. They basically just gave him donations, like a Kickstarter type of thing, to be able to raise the money to build the prototype. And then he sells it to Zuckerberg for $1 billion, but none of those people got that. So this allows us, when we're in that position where, we can go public one day or whatever the case may be, all these people, they get to enjoy that ride with us.
Beautiful. So what has the result been? Did the tribe meet your expectations, surpass your expectations?
Definitely surpassed it. We have to do some more internal work so we can raise how much we can raise now, because we exceeded that amount. Looking forward to doing that homework so we can go ahead and open up the round again.
We raised over $1 million in 3.5 weeks.
Congratulations.
And the way that the laws are set up, you have to do another type of financial audit that raises the bar to allow you to raise $5 million.
Right.
So we can't actually accept any more investment right now until that's finished.
This is your round.
It's
kind of the same as if you were going to. That makes sense. That makes sense. That is so beautiful. And again, just another point of, if you were to go to a traditional investor and even just bring that fact, like, our consumer base, our tribe is so loud that we have $1 million in funding.
Yep.
Just from them, from a call to action, and they're still gonna say no.
Well, it's made them look at it a little differently now. Or even already,
see the financial power.
Even already, there's been a couple of investors that are like, wait, you were able to do this in 3 weeks with your tribe, so maybe there's something here. And so I think also what it does, it gives the brand or the company more leverage when you're having those negotiations and those talks with the institutional investors, because if we just keep it 100 for Black founders, we receive less than 0.02% of all venture capital funding. Not less than 2%, less than 0.02% of all venture capital funding. So, and then oftentimes, unfortunately, because of the lack of the financial literacy that goes along with that, when certain Black founders have to sell their businesses, the Black community turns on them because they actually don't understand that there's a limit to the capital that we're able to secure to keep our businesses growing.
Absolutely.
So sometimes that is the only option for a founder who has dedicated 10, 12 years of their life grinding, trying to build this business. That's their only way to get a payoff from that.
Right.
But this now allows us to say, hey, we don't want to sell our whole business, and we want better terms on the investment. And if you're not willing to do that, we can just go raise it from the tribe.
Here. Does an exit or going public make you nervous for the reason that you're describing? Like right now, obviously, again, team of 3.
Yeah.
You have all the control, but not just control, but, this is something it's so dear. The mission, the values can't go anywhere, can't get watered down, can't get diluted.
Yeah.
So does the idea of having how do you talked about being selective and trusting with employees.
Yeah.
How does that parlay with investors?
So from a crowdfund perspective, they come onto the cap table as an SPV, which essentially just, in layman's terms means they're all grouped together as one entity on the cap table. So it's not like we got 2,000 people now on the cap table. They all come in as a group, and we get to select the person who represents that group. So if there's a vote or something that we need to do and we want to include them, that person represents that group of investors.
And that applies for the tribe funding, and if you go to like a venture capital or
that definitely applies for the crowdfunding. As far as venture capital, those institutional investors, if they're giving you those millions of dollars, they want a seat on your board. So they're going to want to have the votes that they need to have. And but like I said, us now being in the position that we're in, we have a little more leverage when it comes to those negotiations. As far as the whole going public thing, it would be dope from a perspective of what that would mean for all of these tribe members and the wealth that it could create for them. So that's one reason why that is a goal of mine. But the other option is the Chick-fil-A method. Chick-fil-A is a private-owned company.
No way.
They're not publicly traded. And because of that, their ownership, when they say we not opening on Sundays, they there's no pressure from the public like, hey, we want more revenue, so open up on Sunday. They're like, hey, this is our Christian values. We believe we're not going to be working on Sundays. So they control that.
Wow.
Because they still make so much money and are so profitable, they can pay out dividends to their investors and remain private. So that's the other kind of option that I hope we can be in that position where we have grown and scaled so much and remain private that we don't have to compromise any of our values or what we want to do, and we can still give a return to our investors.
That is so beautiful. Well, Lanny, Bianca, thank you. I am, first of all, genuinely, I'm just so grateful that this brand exists. I'm so grateful that a mission, values-driven empire is being built for this specific mission. I love missions. I love visions. I love lots of causes. But this specific mission means so much and has so far to go. People love to think we live in a post-racial. We know what we have on deck for the next 4 years and the damage that that's going to do. We've seen ugly and uglier. You've seen it. I've read through your social media comments. And I've read through your social media. It hurts. It hurts. People say nasty work. And so I'm just so proud to even be in the community, in the tribe, and just know that this is something where your success is just beginning. You guys are completely unstoppable. And I appreciate so much that ADHD has also made, I know you said you're uncomfortable being a public figure or the idea of that, but the benefit to that is that you're able to align yourself with advocacy as you have for the Black community now for so long. in anything that you feel is underrepresented and needs a louder voice. And the ADHD community is certainly one of those communities as well. Completely different way, but it's so, a lot of people are living in a stigma. Stigma of their blackness, stigma of their neurodivergence, of their ADHD, of their mental health. And you just being willing to put everything about yourself and your values out there for people. And for people to see, like, maybe this person I'm looking up to isn't perfect and struggles and experiences doubts and experiences problems in their relationships and problems in whatever. Like, it's so important to continue to give a voice to people who don't feel like they have a voice. That's why I am starting this platform, and that's why I want to bring people like you on the platform. And I'm so grateful for you, because let's be honest, wouldn't have happened if Bianca was not organizing for us to get into the room. So thank you for, she had my outfit sent to me. Y'all, I was saying to them that, like, I just need social media to come out with, like, you can feel the clothing. This brand needs to not be e-commerce for that much longer. Y'all need a brick and mortar where I can just, because I'm going to come in, like, stroke the furry wall, you know, and just touch it. It's so soft. It's so high quality. It's so beautiful. I've been so comfortable this entire time, just, you know, moving around. But I just know that there's so much garbage out there in the athletic wear and the sportswear world. There's so much PFAs, so much stuff that's leaking into our bodies and all these things. And this stuff is really, it's more than what it looks. I mean, it looks great, but it feels great. Thank you. And I didn't have a script for none of that. I never even said an ad. So this is really a special thing, and I'm honored to wear it. I'm really honored to wear it, and I'm really honored to have you guys. So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What we're going to do is Lanny and Bianca have brought some of their most favorite and most notable collaborations that they've done with Black legacy entertainment brands and athletic brands and every type of fashion brand. So they brought some of their favorites with them. They're going to walk us through a couple of those pieces and just talk about how they came to life, or what the significance was, what it means to them as founders and in their mission. And I'm really looking forward to showing you guys some of this amazing, amazing work and art forms. And it's a revolution in clothing. So let's get to it. It's awesome. Lanny.
Yes.
You are the founder and CEO of a clothing brand called Actively Black.
Actively Black.
You're so much more than that, which is why we've had an incredible opportunity to connect about your story from basketball, making it to the NBA, career-ending injuries, ADHD diagnosis, multiple businesses. But we haven't really talked about the clothes.
Yeah.
And the clothes tell a lot of stories and bring a very specific mission to life.
Yep.
In the last couple of years, you've done collaborations with major legacy estates, brands, people, everyone from Tupac Shakur, Bob Marley, Muhammad Ali, Allen Iverson. These are the goats of the goats, the greatest Black people to ever live have given you their names, their likeness, their image to collaborate and to put them in line with your brand and your purpose and your mission. So first, I just want to ask you, why do you think that is?
Wow. I think that, you know, the people that we've been able to come in contact with at each of those estates, for all those people, have been able to see the authenticity in which we represent not only the brand, but the mission and the purpose. And I think all those people that you mentioned also live very purpose-driven lives, the ones who are no longer here with us. And that purpose and that mission aligns with what the brand represents. And so I think, you know, we've been very fortunate to have their families give us the blessing to be able to represent them through this brand. It's something that I'm so humbled by. I mean, these are names, these are people who I've had hanging up on my wall growing up. You know what I mean? So
They're heroes.
it's honestly kind of still surreal at times, even as you were listing off those names. It's surreal.
Something that I've just lived in awe of for just the short few years that I've known you is you'll do this thing where you post on Instagram, like the Jacksons, for example, and you'll be like, actively black X Michael Jackson, question mark? And most people would look at that and be like, you're crazy. The Jacksons?
Right.
But I know better now because I've now been watching for over 2 years that you put it on there and then you do it. I don't know if it's already in talks or already signed, but the ability that you have to speak it into existence.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in speaking things into existence. Everything that I've ever been blessed to do, I said it first. You know what I mean? Whether it was the NBA, I was saying I'm going to the NBA. And I believe, you know, a lot of people talk about manifestation and they talk about that first part, you know, of acknowledging and verbalizing and writing that thing down. But it's the action after that that really activates the manifestation. And so because I truly believe what I'm saying, my actions follow that. So whether it was basketball, if I'm saying I'm going to play in the NBA, that meant I was going to go back to the gym when my friends were at the parties. I was in the gym working on it because not only am I speaking it, but I'm walking in and preparing for that to actually happen. And so honestly, it's been a combination of both. Sometimes I've said those things, just declaring it and putting it in the universe, and you know, we're 6 degrees of separation from anybody, but now that, you know, through social media, we're kind of even closer to that connectivity. So there's times where I've said those things and they came to fruition because somebody saw one thing and I got connected to somebody, and other times just teasing people,
teasing something you know is happening.
Yeah.
All right, so you have brought with you, I know that this is just a sample, a slice of all the collaborations and names, but I asked you to bring a few pieces that represent some of the most meaningful collaborations that you have done and collections that you've brought to life. So I would love to just go through what you have here, talk a little bit, show what it is, talk a little bit about what that collection means to you, why that collaboration was important. And a little bit maybe about how it came about, but really just ultimately to showcase this museum of Black history and the Black present. So I'm going to give it to you to take it away.
Let me
Teach
see
me a little.
where I want to start, man. I think I'm going to start. I'm going to start with FUBU.
Ooh.
Right? And the reason being is, you know, I always make sure I pay homage. There is no actively Black without there first being FUBU. I just want to get that straight. When I was growing up, getting a FUBU hoodie, a shirt, a jacket meant everything to me. And we talked earlier about, you know, representation. To see 4 Black men as the founders being the faces of this brand impacted me beyond what I even realized in that moment. You know what I'm saying? And I think that was just really dope. So to be able to do a collaboration with FUBU is it's still unbelievable, man. Shout out to the founders. Shout out to those guys. I'm always appreciative of that. But another reason why this is so important is because it led to another collaboration that might be the most meaningful to me, only because this movie sparked the idea for Actively Black. So back in 2018, the movie Black Panther came out. Again, power representation, seeing a Black superhero on the big screen with hair like mine, with skin like mine. It meant everything to me. That was the first time in my lifetime that I saw the diaspora come together in the way that it did. And when I saw the messages that Ryan Coogler wrote into this Marvel superhero movie, it really, really impacted me. And I walked out of the theater with such pride in being Black, in my culture, in my history. And so some of those symbols ended up planting seeds that ended up becoming Actively Black. So I remember walking out of the theater saying, I want to create a brand that makes my people feel the way that movie made us feel. I didn't know at the time it was going to be Actively Black. That was 2018. Actively Black launched in 2020. But, you know, when you think about like vibranium and what that represents in the movie, this special thing that they had that everybody else was trying to get to, that powered the tech and how powerful that was. The tagline for Actively Black is "There's greatness in our DNA." That's our vibranium, right? You know what I mean?
It's in us.
And you know, the centuries of oppression, of slavery, all those different types of things, like we're more than our trauma. We're more than what has been done to us. And that movie kind of brought that to the forefront of my mind. And I wanted to create a brand that represented that. So crazy enough, after that movie, I was so obsessed with Black Panther that I first created some shirts that said like, citizen of Wakanda, but I live in Houston. Like, and wasn't licensed, right? And I was like, you know what? Let me stop doing this, which I did. But I was obsessed with this movie, and so Damon John reached out about a collaboration for the FUBU Actively Black collab. I walk into the meeting, and Damon John is wearing an Actively Black hoodie. So first, I'm trying to keep my cool in the meeting because it's like, man, the founder of FUBU is wearing my hoodie. Like it was crazy. So I kept my cool in the meeting. We talked about the collab and he asked me, what else are you working on? And I almost didn't show it to him because I'm thinking Shark Tank Damon. I've seen them tear apart entrepreneurs who say they have an idea, but they don't have an actual plan of it. I had a deck of what an Actively Black Panther collab would look like. When I created this deck, I had no connection to Marvel, Disney, nothing. The movie just inspired me so much that I just created this deck. I showed it to Damon John, and in the middle of the meeting, he picked up the phone and he called the head of licensing for Marvel and Disney and said, you have to see this.
Wow.
So this collaboration, the idea was Wakanda athletics. If we lived in Wakanda, what kind of athleisure wear would we be wearing? That was the concept.
Team Wakanda.
Yeah, you know, like if you went to Wakanda University, what would you be wearing? That was the concept behind the whole collection. He loved it. 2 days after that meeting, I was in a meeting with Disney and Marvel, pitched them an idea, and they loved the idea. That's how we got the deal. So,
and I seen Lupita Nyong'o wearing the Wakanda Athletics Actively Black.
Lupita, shout out, you know, Chadwick Boseman's wife.
R.I.P.
She's been wearing it. You know what I mean? It
means something.
The full circle moment. And then one last full circle moment with this. So Ryan Coogler was doing a fireside chat in Los Angeles. I got a chance to attend, and I was asking him about some of those messages that he wrote into the movie. And he asked me, have you been to Africa? And I was like, I haven't been. He's like, you gotta go. It's going to, he said it, you'll be less angry when you come back. I literally looked at Bianca and I said, yo, let's go. We went to Ghana in 2022 and visited the slave dungeons, stepping foot inside these 600-year-old dungeons where, you know, Africans were kept in an inhumane way and tortured. And then they walked through these doors that they call the point of no return. Basically, when they were loading up those slave ships, they called the point of return because once they left, they never came back, right? And I walked through those doors and I thought I'd be filled with rage, but it was actually the opposite. I was like, but I returned. It says point of no return, but I returned. You know what I'm saying? And it was like this powerful moment for me where it was like, that means somebody in my lineage survived Jim Crow, survived the 300 years of slavery, survived that middle passage across the Atlantic, survived those dungeons. Somebody in my lineage survived that. You know what I'm saying? And so when you think about that tagline, there's greatness in our DNA, it was already real to me, but it made it something that was like tangible, that I'm standing here because somebody survived all of that. And I came back. And so I'm so thankful to have met Ryan Coogler and for him to tell me, yo, bro, you need to go to Africa. Then we get back to the hotel and Letitia Wright, who plays Black Panther in the second movie, is in the hotel that I'm staying at. So I get back from the visit to the slave castles and Letitia Wright, the Black Panther in Wakanda Forever, is in the lobby of my hotel I get a chance to meet her. I was actually wearing the gear when I met her, and it was like, there's just no, like, I could never have planned this, right? So Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther, tells me I need to visit Africa. I go to Africa, I have this experience, and I get back to my hotel, and the Black Panther is in the lobby, and I get to meet her while I'm wearing it. So, yeah, this is obviously very, very special for me, and I think this was kind of the first collab that made people look at Actively Black as legitimate. Because before this, it was like somebody else with a clothing brand.
Well, it's Marvel, it's Disney, it's not small potatoes.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly.
So that definitely makes sense.
Man, this is my guy Bubba Chuck, Allen Iverson. This is a collaboration we did with AI. Him and Michael Jordan were the two guys that I looked up to as a basketball player growing up, and then his impact on culture, right? Like, you see all of the players walk in the locker room, you know, with their drip, with their fashion sense, and it's celebrated now. But when Allen Iverson was doing it, he kind of was vilified for not coming into the game wearing a suit. He was just like, hey, this is who I am. I'm authentically being me.
Yes.
And he took the arrows for it that have allowed the guys to wear what they want to wear and express themselves now. So it was dope being able to collaborate with a hero of mine. And this particular one, you know, Allen was very... you know, what he wore on the court, he wore this sleeve, this arm sleeve that kind of became his thing. It's the AI sleeve.
Yes.
And I thought it would be cool to do a contrasted sleeve on the hood to kind of pay homage to that.
I have to say, y'all had a really funny rollout for this because it was like the start of the AI movement. So they made a whole thing that they were announcing some major AI innovation or developments, and everyone thought it meant artificial intelligence. So that was really clever,
really
beautiful.
Man, this one, the Summer Olympics in Paris, we outfitted Team Nigeria. Still hadn't really fully processed this moment. It was just so huge. One, for a Black-owned brand and a brand that had only been around for 3 years at the time to get this opportunity was huge. And then, like, I think the moment that is seared into my mind is a picture that I saw after one of the races, and it was one of the track athletes sponsored by Nike running next to one of the track athletes sponsored by Puma, and then one of the Nigerian athletes, and you see our logo next to these logos of these legacy brands and corporations that are worth billions of dollars, and here we are and on the same place.
You know, one of my favorite things that you repeat and say a lot, and I think is so important, is that you're not looking for a seat at the table, you're building your own table. And this is a personification of that moment. That is a big, because you brought the whole table to the Olympics. You said,
nah, this is,
we will be.
This is a moment that I live forever.
Incredible.
Bob Marley. So the funny thing about this is, the estate reached out. They loved what we've been building with Actively Black and what it represented. And, you know, they're very protective of the legacy of Bob Marley, obviously.
Yes, understandably,
you know,
so.
The family is. And so the movie One Love was coming out, and they hit us up probably a month before the movie came out. And they're like, can we do a collab?
Not a month.
How do you say no to that, though? How do you say no to Bob Marley? So, this was
that's a signature on the sleeve.
Yeah, for One Love.
Wow. Incredible.
Wow, this one, the Tupac estate. Another guy that I looked up to, that, you know, his picture's been on my wall for a long time. What he meant to the culture, what he meant to me. I wrote poetry in high school, and my guys used to tease me about that, right? Like, oh man, you writing poetry.
Just funny because it's rap, but
really.
Like, rap is literally.
But when you call it poetry, it has a, you know, it's not as masculine, I guess, whatever the case may be. And so I remember just growing up finding out that Tupac wrote poetry, and that was kind of like my response to that. Like, man, Pac writes poetry, so and they never could say anything about that. So it was always something that was cool. Knowing what he represented, being a Panther Cub, he was a child. His mother was a Black Panther, and what he represented and what he wanted to do for our people, man. So this is just means a lot to me personally to be able to collaborate with. I mean, it's Tupac.
It's incredible.
And then This was one of our more recent collabs with Disney again for Mufasa, the Lion
wow. Yeah, I haven't seen these.
King. Which was, I was really nervous about the execution for this collab because, you know, with Wakanda, you've got people, right? And people can, the concept of wearing this athleisure makes sense. Mufasa, at the end of the day, it's talking animals.
Right.
So how do you make something that's not gonna be too kiddie, that people would actually want to wear? And when we got the assets, you know, this was one of the expressions that we came up with, and everybody loves it. You know, it's been really,
you just
it's been
can't
really
wait
dope.
to be a king.
Yeah.
That's perfect in the back. So that's the
Yeah,
slogan,
that's
the
greatness
same
in our
text. The
DNA.
texture is incredible.
Yeah.
I really just want to reiterate that, like, the quality and the attention to detail in all of your designs, it's something that can't be translated online. And I'm really excited for the store one day because people really to feel this. I mean, this will last a lifetime.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and we were very intentional about that because unfortunately, part of the misconception about Black-owned brands is that you're gonna have to sacrifice quality. And so, if I'm leading with the message saying there's greatness in our DNA, but it's on trash quality, nobody's really gonna take that seriously. But one of the things that brings me the most joy when I see tribe members and they're leaving their reviews, whether it's on social media or on our website, and they're like, oh, this feels just as good, if not better, than my Nike or my Lululemon. And that translates into how they feel when they're wearing it. It's like, there's greatness in my DNA, so I got the message, and the product matches that. So it's like they walk around with their chest a little
They feel
higher.
great. Yeah,
I love
right.
it.
That's proper.
And then finally, we have here, you know, the collaboration with Muhammad Ali, the Muhammad Ali estate. This one's also special for a couple of reasons. One, because of who Muhammad Ali was and what he stood for and how outspoken he was about being proud to be Black and speaking up for our people. I've said that if there was ever an athlete that would have been the face of Actively Black, it would have been Muhammad Ali. You know what I mean? And so love the fact that we got a chance to do a collab here, and his wife actually reached out. She saw the Wakanda collab.
Right.
And she reached out, and we got a chance to meet her and Lanny Ali. She told me, she said, we've done collaborations with many brands, and most people focus on, you know, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, understandably so. But she said, Actively Black can represent what my husband stood for in a way that none of those other brands can, because he stood for so much more than what he did inside the ring. And so to hear that, you know, I think, you know, not only from Muhammad Ali, from Tupac's estate, from everybody is the fact that they respect and love the authenticity and what we represent means everything to me, because that means the cosign is coming from people who actually knew them, who knew what their values were, and getting their blessing to do this has been absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's incredibly iconic, but I think the most inspiring thing about it is the proof that when you operate a business that is mission and values driven, and you're so clear and you stand in that authenticity, there's almost no choice but to succeed, because you will attract everything that's in alignment with those values. And I think I work in marketing, as I've mentioned, and people come to me all the time asking me to, you know, how do I promote this? How do I get more people to know about it? And the first thing I always tell them is, well, why do you want more people to know about it? Why did you do this? I need that story in order to understand where to put them or how to promote them, or if they can reach those people. And this is so clearly a testament to the alignment. Like, everything that's for you is attracting to you. You didn't even proactively pursue a lot of these. They came to you because you don't negotiate with what the brand is about. Had you changed the name, had you not been outspoken, all the things people will tell a founder, don't be outspoken, don't talk about these things because da-da-da-da-da. And I know you have experienced some consequences, you know, maybe of traditional investing or whatever, but it doesn't compare, in my opinion, my humble opinion, to the greatness of what's happening here. And this is more than clothes. This is a museum of Black greatness. And I'm so blown away. I'm so blown away. I encourage everybody to listen to this just with the feeling of, what am I about
Yeah.
in this life, and to just start living within that purpose. You're a true testament of what that does.
My partner Bianca, she reminded me, like, we've talked about this. We're not actually building an apparel brand. Like, the clothes are just a uniform for the movement. And I think when I think our tribe understands that it's bigger than just the garment that I'm putting on, like what this means, what it represents, how it makes me feel. It's something that honestly then becomes your competitive advantage, because let's be honest, we don't have the budgets to compete with Nike and Adidas and Puma on product development, on R&D, on marketing, on advertising, right? But I've got something that they can't compete with me on. They can't be more authentic about our culture and about what we stand for than Actively Black. It doesn't matter how much money Nike has. They can't do it. Actively Black.
We love that. Yeah. All right, well, to wrap up, I've taken plenty of your time. If you could just leave the ADH-Chievers audience, anyone out there who might be struggling to find their lane, anyone out there who maybe knows or doesn't know but identifies with some of what we've talked about today, with kind of one piece of advice or something to just take away from this and from you and your story, your experience, what would that be?
I would say it would be to really do some self-reflection on what those natural passions in your life are. You know, what are the things that you're thinking about when you're going to sleep, when you're waking up, that you can just naturally think about, that you don't have to force yourself to be interested in. And, you know, this is something I also tell the athletes I talk to as well, is if you're leading with those passions, then start seeing where you can develop a lane to explore those things. And it doesn't have to be something that you're good at. I think that's probably the biggest part of this, is what stops a lot of people is like, well, I might be interested in this, passionate about this, but I'm not good at this. You don't have to be. I never took a sewing class. I don't know anything about fashion or product or anything. I literally went to YouTube University to teach myself how to use Photoshop and Illustrator. I saved the first article that I Googled and printed out, how to come up with a company name. Like, you got to understand, like, I literally started this not knowing anything, but the passion is what led me to on the learning journey of, okay, how do I educate myself to learn the tools that I need to jump into something that will allow me to express these passions. So if you're led with those passions and those natural interests, then follow that with the work on, what do I need to learn? What tools do I need to obtain to do something in this lane? For most of us who have ADHD, we've grown up in a world that is not conducive to how our brains work. So entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, but for those of us with ADHD, we do have certain ways that our brains are wired that actually make us a little more cut out for being an entrepreneur. That may not be your path, but I think following your passion, that thing that is only you know, that you think about before you go to sleep, when you wake up, that thing that keeps coming back to you, that use it as like your compass, as your guiding, you know, to figure out your path.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I couldn't agree more with you. And I've experienced that in my own life. And so things that you just do naturally and talk about naturally, people look to you naturally. And then all of a sudden, when you put that into your professional world, it's like, oh, this is going pretty well. So grateful, Lanny. As always, I'm even more inspired than I was before, but this is just been incredible. And I'm very, very, very grateful.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
For having me.